Peace, family. It's your brother, Marc Lamont Hill. Welcome to Night School. Tonight is a very special episode of Night School. It is the Biden-Trump debate watch party. We're going to be watching the whole debate and give you live analysis afterward. Right now, I'm just going to go full screen, let y'all watch the whole debate because I know y'all didn't come to watch me. And while we watch this debate and they're about to come out and hit the stage, we will be chatting, talking trash, having fun, laughing. Y'all probably be drinking and throwing stuff at the screen. That's all good. I'll be in there with you. And the moment there's a break and the moment it ends, you'll see me on screen and we will have a full post-debate analysis. It'll be me. It'll be David Johns. It'll be Rebecca Azor. It's two brilliant political analysts giving you everything you need to know about what happened. I'm going to go straight to CNN as they give you the rules of the debate.
Is the reason why we're in this problem right now. In addition to that, we're in a situation where if you take a look at all that was done in his administration, he didn't do much at all. By the time he left, things were in chaos, literally chaos. And so we put things back together. We created, I said, those jobs. We make sure we had a situation where we brought down the price of prescription drugs, which is a major issue for many people, to $15 for a insulin shot as opposed to $400. No senior has to pay more than $200 for any drug, all the drugs they can include beginning next year. And the situation is and we're going to make that available to everybody, to all Americans. So we're working to bring down the price around the kitchen table, and that's what we're going to get done.
Thank you. President Trump?
We have the greatest economy in the history of our country. We have never done so well. Everybody was amazed by it. Other countries were copying us. We got hit with COVID. And when we did, we spent the money necessary so we wouldn't end up in a Great Depression, the likes of which we had in 1929. By the time we finished, so we did a great job. We got a lot of credit for the economy, a lot of credit for the military, and no wars and so many other things. Everything was rocking good. But the thing we never got the credit for, and we should have, is getting us out of that COVID mess. He created mandates that was a disaster for our country. But other than that, we had given them back a country where the stock market actually was higher than pre-COVID, and nobody thought that was even possible. The only jobs he created are for illegal immigrants and bounce back jobs, a bounce back from the COVID. He has not done a good job. He's done a poor job, and inflation's killing our country. It is absolutely killing us.
Thank you. President Biden?
Well, look, the greatest economy in the world. He's the only one who thinks that, I think. I don't know anybody else who thinks he had the greatest economy in the world. And, the fact of the matter is that we found ourselves in a situation where his economy, he rewarded the wealthy. He had the largest tax cut in American history, $2 trillion. He raised a deficit larger than any president has in any one term. He's the only president other than Herbert Hoover who's lost more jobs than he had when he began, since Herbert Hoover. The idea that he did something that was significant. And the military, when he was president, they were still killing people in Afghanistan. He didn't do anything about that. When he was president, we were still finding ourselves in a position where you had a notion that we were this safe country. The truth is, I'm the only president this century that doesn't have this decade, that doesn't have any troops dying anywhere in the world like he did.
President Trump, I want to follow up if I can.
Am I allowed to respond to him?
Well, I'm going to ask you a follow-up. You can do whatever you want with the minute that we give you. I want to follow up. You want to impose a 10% tariff on all goods coming into the U.S. How will you ensure that that doesn't drive prices even higher?
It's not going to drive them higher. It's just going to cost countries that have been ripping us off for years, like China and many others, in all fairness to China. It's going to just force them to pay us a lot of money, reduce our deficit tremendously, and give us a lot of power for other things. But he made a statement. The only thing he was right about is I gave you the largest tax cut in history. I also gave you the largest regulation cut in history. That's why we had all the jobs. And the jobs went down and then they bounced back. And he's taking credit for bounce back jobs. You can't do that. He also said he inherited 9% inflation. No, he inherited almost no inflation, and it stayed that way for 14 months. And then it blew up under his leadership because they spent money like a bunch of people that didn't know what they were doing, and they don't know what they were doing. It was probably the worst administration in history. There's never been. And as far as Afghanistan is concerned, I was getting out of Afghanistan, but we were getting out with dignity, with strength, with power. He got out. It was the most embarrassing day in the history of our country's life.
President Trump, over the last 8 years, under both of your administrations, the national debt soared to record highs. And according to a new nonpartisan analysis, President Trump, your administration approved $8.4 trillion in new debt. Well, so far, President Biden, you've approved $4.3 trillion in new debt. So, former President Trump, many of the tax cuts that you signed into law are set to expire next year. You want to extend them and go even further, you say. With the U.S. facing trillion-dollar deficits and record debt, why should top earners and corporations pay even less in taxes than they do now?
Because the tax cuts spurred the greatest economy that we've ever seen just prior to COVID. And even after COVID, it was so strong that we were able to get through COVID much better than just about any other country. But we spurred, that tax spurred. Now, when we cut the taxes, as an example, the corporate tax was cut down to 21% from 39%, plus beyond that. We took in more revenue with much less tax, and companies were bringing back trillions of dollars back into our country. The country was going like never before, and we were ready to start paying down debt. We were ready to start using the liquid gold right under our feet, the oil and gas right under our feet. We were going to have something that nobody else has had. We got hit with COVID. We did a lot to fix it. I gave him an unbelievable situation with all of the therapeutics and all of the things that we came up with. We gave him something great. Remember, more people died under his administration, even though we had largely fixed it. More people died under his administration than our administration, and we were right in the middle of it, something which a lot of people don't like to talk about. But he had far more people dying in his administration. He did the mandate, which is a disaster, mandating it. The vaccine went out. He did a mandate on the vaccine, which is the thing that people most objected to about the vaccine. And he did a very poor job, just a very poor job. And I will tell you, not only poor there, but throughout the entire world, we're no longer respected as a country. They don't respect our leadership. They don't respect the United States anymore. We're like a third world nation between weaponization of his election, trying to go after his political opponent, all of the things he's done. We've become like a third world nation, and it's a shame. The damage he's done to our country. And I'd love to ask him, and will, why he allowed millions of people to come in here from prisons, jails, and mental institutions to come into our country and destroy our country.
President Trump, we will get to immigration later in this block. President Biden, I want to give you an opportunity to respond to this question about the national debt.
He had the largest national debt of any president in a four-year period, number one. Number two, that $2 trillion tax cut benefited the very wealthy. What I'm going to do is fix the tax system. For example, we have 1,000 trillionaires in America. Billionaires in America. And what's happening? They're in a situation where they, in fact, pay 8.2% in taxes. If they just paid 24%, 25%, either one of those numbers, they'd raise $500 billion, I should say, in a 10-year period. We'd be able to wipe out his debt. We'd be able to help make sure that all those things we need to do, child care, elder care, making sure that we continue to strengthen our healthcare system, making sure that we're able to make every single solitary person eligible for what I've been able to do with the COVID. With dealing with everything we have to do with. Look, if we finally beat Medicare.
Thank you, President Biden. President Trump.
Well, he's right. He did beat Medicare. He beat it to death, and he's destroying Medicare because all of these people are coming in. They're putting them on Medicare. They're putting them on Social Security. They're going to destroy Social Security. This man is going to single-handedly destroy Social Security. These millions and millions of people coming in, they're trying to put them on Social Security. He will wipe out Social Security. He will wipe out Medicare. So he was right in the way he finished that sentence. And it's a shame. What's happened to our country in the last 4 years is not to be believed. Foreign countries, I'm friends with a lot of people, they cannot believe what happened to the United States of America. We're no longer respected. They don't like us. We give them everything they want, and they think we're stupid. They think we're very stupid people. What we're doing for other countries, and they do nothing for us. What this man has done is absolutely criminal.
Thank you, President Trump. Dana?
This is the first presidential election since the Supreme Court overturned Roe v. Wade. This morning, the court ruled on yet another abortion case, temporarily allowing emergency abortions to continue in Idaho, despite that state's restrictive ban. Former President Trump, You take credit for the decision to overturn Roe v. Wade, which returned the issue of abortion to the states.
Correct.
However, the federal government still plays a role in whether or not women have access to abortion pills. They're used in about 2/3 of all abortions. As president, would you block abortion medication?
First of all, the Supreme Court just approved the abortion bill, and I agree with their decision to have done that, and I will not block it. And if you look at this whole question that you're asking, complex, but not really complex. 51 years ago, you had Roe v. Wade, and everybody wanted to get it back to the states. Everybody, without exception. Democrats, Republicans, liberals, conservatives, everybody wanted it back. Religious leaders. And what I did is I put 3 great Supreme Court justices on the court, and they happened to vote in favor of killing Roe v. Wade and moving it back to the states. This is something that everybody wanted. Now, 10 years ago or so, they started talking about how many weeks and how many this, getting into other things. But every legal scholar throughout the world, the most respected, wanted it brought back to the states. I did that. Now the states are working it out. If you look at Ohio, it was a decision that was an end result that was a little bit more liberal than you would have thought. Kansas, I would say the same thing. Texas is different. Florida is different. But they're all making their own decisions right now. And right now, the states control it. That's the vote of the people. Like Ronald Reagan, I believe in the exceptions. I am a person that believes. And frankly, I think it's important to believe in the exceptions. Some people, you have to follow your heart. Some people don't believe in that. But I believe in the exceptions for rape, incest, and the life of the mother. I think it's very important. Some people don't. Follow your heart. But you have to get elected also. And because that has to do with other things. You got to get elected. The problem they have is they're radical because they will take the life of a child in the 8th month, the 9th month, and even after birth. After birth, if you look at the former governor of Virginia, he was willing to do this. He said, we'll put the baby aside and we'll determine what we do with the baby, meaning we'll kill the baby. What happened is we brought it back to the states, and the country is now coming together on this issue. It's been a great thing.
Thank you. President Biden?
It's been a terrible thing, what you've done. The fact is that the vast majority of constitutional scholars supported Roe when it was decided, supported Roe. And that's this idea that they're all against it is just ridiculous. And this is the guy who says the state should be able to have it. We're in a state where in 6 weeks, you don't even know whether you're pregnant or not, but you cannot see a doctor, and have him decide on what your circumstances are, whether you need help. The idea that states are able to do this is a little like saying we're going to turn civil rights back to the states, let each state have a different rule. Look, there's so many young women who have been, including a young woman who just was murdered, and he went to the funeral. The idea that she was murdered by an immigrant coming in, they talk about that. But here's the deal: there's a lot of young women are being raped by their in-laws, by their spouses, brothers and sisters, it's just ridiculous, and they can do nothing about it. And they try to arrest them when they cross state lines.
Thank you.
There have been many young women murdered by the same people he allows to come across our border. We have a border that's the most dangerous place anywhere in the world, considered the most dangerous place anywhere in the world. And he opened it up, and these killers are coming into our country, and they are raping and killing women. And it's a terrible thing. As far as the abortion is concerned, it is now back with the states. The states are voting. In many cases, it's frankly a very liberal decision. In many cases, it's the opposite. But they're voting, and it's bringing it back to the vote of the people, which is what everybody wanted, including the founders, if they knew about this issue, which frankly they didn't. But they would have, everybody wanted brought back. Ronald Reagan wanted it brought back. He wasn't able to get it. Everybody wanted it brought back, and many presidents had tried to get it back. I was the one to do it. And again, this gives it the vote of the people, and that's where they wanted it. Every legal scholar wanted it that way.
Staying on the topic of abortion, President Biden, 7 states, I'll let you do that. This is the same topic. 7 states have no legal restrictions on how far into a pregnancy a woman can obtain an abortion. Do you support any legal limits on how late a woman should be able to terminate a pregnancy?
I supported Roe v. Wade, which had 3 trimesters. First time is between the woman and the doctor. Second time is between the doctor and an extreme situation. The third time is between the doctor, between the woman and the state. The idea that the politicians, that the founders wanted the politicians to be the ones making decisions about women's health is ridiculous. That's the last. No politician should be making that decision. A doctor should be making those decisions. That's how it should be run. That's what you're going to do. And if I'm elected, I'm going to restore Roe v. Wade.
So that means he can take the life of the baby in the 9th month and even after birth, because some states, Democrat run, take it after birth. Again, the former governor of Virginia, put the baby down, then we decide what to do with it. So he's willing to, as we say, rip the baby out of the womb in the 9th month and kill the baby. Nobody wants that to happen, Democrat or Republican. Nobody wants it to happen.
That is simply not true. The Roe v. Wade does not provide for that. That's not the circumstance. Only if a woman's life is in danger, she's going to die. That's the only circumstance in which that can happen. But we are not for late-term abortion, period.
Under Roe v. Wade, you have late-term abortion. You can do whatever you want, depending on the state. You can do whatever you want. We don't think that's a good thing. We think it's a radical thing. We think the Democrats are the radicals, not the Republicans.
For 51 years, that was the law. 51 years, constitutional scholarship said it was the right way to go. 51 years, and it was taken away because this guy put very conservative members on the Supreme Court. He takes credit for taking it away. What's he going to do? What's he going to do, in fact, if the MAGA Republicans, he gets elected and the MAGA Republicans control the Congress and they pass a universal ban on abortion, period, across the board at 6 weeks or 7 or 8 or 10 weeks, something very, very conservative. Is he going to sign that bill? I'll veto it. He'll sign it.
Thank you.
Let's turn now to the issue of immigration and border security. President Biden, a record number of migrants have illegally crossed the southern border on your watch. Overwhelming border states and overburdening cities such as New York and Chicago, and in some cases causing real safety and security concerns. Given that, why should voters trust you to solve this crisis?
Because we worked very hard to get a bipartisan agreement that not only changed all of that, it made sure that we are in a situation where you had no circumstance where they could come across the border with the number of border police there are now. We significantly increased the number of asylum officers, significantly. By the way, the Border Patrol endorsed my position. In addition to that, we found ourselves in a situation where when he was president, he was separating babies from their mothers, putting them in cages, making sure the families were separated. That's not the right way to go. What I've done since I've changed the law, what's happened? I've changed it in a way that now you're in a situation where there are 40% fewer people coming across the border illegally. That's better than when he left office. And I'm going to continue to move until we get the total ban on the total initiative relative to what we're going to do with more Border Patrol and more asylum officers.
President Trump?
I really don't know what he said at the end of that sentence. I don't think he knows what he said either. Look, we had the safest border in the history of our country. The border, all he had to do was leave it. All he had to do was leave it. He decided to open up our border, open up our country to people that are from prisons, people that are from mental institutions, insane asylum, terrorists. We have the largest number of terrorists coming into our country right now, all terrorists, all over the world, not just in South America, all over the world. They come from the Middle East, everywhere, all over the world, they're pouring in. And this guy just left it open. And he didn't need legislation because I didn't have legislation. I said, close the border. We had the safest border in history. In that final couple of months of my presidency, we had, according to Border Patrol, who is great, and by the way, who endorsed me for president, but I won't say that, but they endorsed me for president. Brandon, just speak to him. But look, we had the safest border in history. Now we have the worst border in history. There's never been anything like it. And people are dying all over the place, including the people that are coming up in
Thank you,
caravans.
President Trump. President Biden?
The only terrorist who's done anything crossing the border is one who came along and killed three, under his administration, killed an Al-Qaeda person come in his administration, killed three American soldiers. That's the only terrorist that's there. I'm not saying that no terrorist ever got through, but the idea they're emptying their prisons, we're welcoming these people, that's simply not true. There's no data to support what he said. Once again, he's exaggerating, he's lying.
President Trump, staying on the topic of immigration, you've said that you're going to carry out, quote, the largest domestic deportation operation in American history, unquote. Does that mean that you will deport every undocumented immigrant in America, including those who have jobs, including those whose spouses are citizens, and including those who have lived here for decades? And if so, how will you do it?
Just 1 second. He said we killed 3 people. The people we killed are al-Baghdadi and Soleimani, the 2 greatest terrorists, biggest terrorists anywhere in the world. And it had a huge impact on everything, not just border, on everything. He's the one that killed people with the bad water, including hundreds of thousands of people dying and also killing our citizens when they come in. We are living right now in a rat's nest. They're killing our people in New York, in California, in every state in the union, because we don't have borders anymore. Every state is now a border. And because of his ridiculous, insane, and very stupid policies, people are coming in and they're killing our citizens at a level that we've never seen. We call it migrant crime. I call it Biden migrant crime. They're killing our citizens at a level that we've never seen before. And you're reading it like these 3 incredible young girls over the last few days. One of them, I just spoke to the mother, and they just had the funeral for this girl, 12 years old. This is horrible what's taken place. What's taken place in our country, we're literally an uncivilized country now. He doesn't want it to be. He just doesn't know. He opened the borders. Nobody's ever seen anything like. And we have to get a lot of these people out, and we have to get them out fast, because they're going to destroy our country. Just take a look at where they're living. They're living in luxury hotels in New York City and other places. Our veterans are on the street. They're dying because he doesn't care about our veterans. He doesn't care. He doesn't like the military at all, and he doesn't care about our veterans. Nobody been worse. I had the highest approval rating for veterans taking care of the VA. He has the worst. He's gotten rid of all the things that I approved, choice that I got through Congress, all of the different things I approved, they abandoned. We had by far the highest, and now it's down in less than half, because he's done all these great things that we did. And I think he did it just because I approved it, which is crazy. But he has killed so many people at our border by allowing all of these people to come in. And it's a very sad day in America.
President Biden, you have the mic.
Every single thing he said is a lie. Every single one. For example, veterans are a hell of a lot better off since I passed the PACT Act. 1 million of them now have insurance, and their families have it. Their families have it because what happened, whether it was Agent Orange or burn pits, they're all being covered now. And his group opposed that. We're also in a situation where we have great respect for veterans. My son spent a year in Iraq, living right next to one of those burn pits, came back with stage 4 glioblastoma. I was recently in France for D-Day, and I spoke all about those heroes that died. I went to the World War I cemetery he refused to go to. He was standing with his 4-star general, and he told me, he said, I don't want to go in there because they're a bunch of losers and suckers. My son was not a loser, was not a sucker. You're the sucker. You're the loser.
President Trump?
First of all, that was a made-up quote, suckers and losers. They made it up. It was in a third-rate magazine that's failing, like many of these magazines. He made that up. He put it in commercials. We've notified him. We had 19 people that said I didn't say it. And think of this. Who would say I'm at a cemetery or I'm talking about our veterans? Because nobody's taken better care. I'm so glad this came up and he brought it up. There's nobody that's taken better care of our soldiers than I have. To think that I would, in front of generals and others, say suckers and losers. We have 19 people that said it was never said by me. It was made up by him, just like Russia was made up, just like the 51 intelligence agents are made up, just like the new thing with the 16 economists are talking. It's the same thing. 51 intelligence agents said that the laptop was Russia disinformation. It wasn't. That came from his son, Hunter. It wasn't Russia disinformation. He made up the suckers and losers, so he should apologize to me right now.
4-star general standing to your side who was on your staff who said you said it, period. That's number one. And number two, the idea that I have to apologize to you for anything along the line. We've done more for veterans than any president has in American history. And they now are in their family. The only sacred obligation we have as a country is to care for our veterans when they come home and their families and equip them when they go to war. That's what we're doing. That's what the VA is doing now. They're doing more for veterans than ever before in our history.
All right. Thank you so much.
Let's move to the topic of foreign policy, I want to begin with Russia's war against Ukraine, which is now in its third year. Former President Trump, Russian President Vladimir Putin says he'll only end this war if Russia keeps the Ukrainian territory it has already claimed and Ukraine abandons its bid to join NATO. Are Putin's terms acceptable to you?
First of all, our veterans and our soldiers can't stand this guy. They can't stand him. They think he's the worst commander in chief, if that's what you call him, that we've ever had. They can't stand him. So let's get that straight. And they like me more than just about any of them. And that's based on every single bit of information. As far as Russia and Ukraine, if we had a real president, the president that knew, that was respected by Putin, he would have never invaded Ukraine. A lot of people are dead right now, much more than people know. You know, they talk about numbers. You can double those numbers, maybe triple those numbers. He did nothing to stop it. In fact, I think he encouraged Russia from going in. I'll tell you what happened. He was so bad with Afghanistan. It was such a horrible embarrassment, most embarrassing moment in the history of our country, that when Putin watched that and he saw the incompetence, that he should have fired those generals, like I fired the one that you mentioned. And so he's got no love lost, but he should have fired those generals. No general got fired for the most embarrassing moment in the history of our country, Afghanistan, where we left billions of dollars of equipment behind. We lost 13 beautiful soldiers, and 38 soldiers were obliterated. And by the way, we left people behind too. We left American citizens behind. When Putin saw that, he said, you know what? I think we're going to go in and maybe take this was his dream. I talked to him about it, his dream. The difference is he never would have invaded Ukraine, never. Just like Israel would have never been invaded in a million years by Hamas. You know why? Because Iran was broke with me. I wouldn't let anybody do business with them. They ran out of money. They were broke. They had no money for Hamas. They had no money for anything, no money for terror. That's why you had no terror at all during my administration. This place, the whole world is blowing up under him.
President Biden?
I've never heard so much malarkey in my whole life. Look, the fact of the matter is that we're in a situation where, let's take the last point first. Iran attacked American troops, caused brain damage for a number of these troops, and he did nothing about it. Recently, not when he was president, they attacked. He said they're just having headaches. That's all it is. He didn't do a thing when the attack took place, number one. Number two, we got over 100,000 Americans and others out of Afghanistan during that airlift. Number three, we found ourselves in a situation where, if you take a look at what Trump did in Ukraine, this guy told Trump, do whatever you want and do whatever you want. And that's exactly what Trump did to Putin, encourage him, do whatever you want. And he went in. And listen to what he said when he went in. He was going to take Kyiv in 5 days, remember? Because it's part of the old Soviet Union. That's what he wanted to reestablish, Kyiv. And he, in fact, didn't do it at all. He wasn't able to get it done. And they've lost thousands and thousands of troops, 500,000 troops.
President Trump,
I never said that.
For 1 minute, I just want to go back to my original question, which is, are Putin's terms acceptable to you? Keeping the territory in Ukraine?
No, they're not acceptable. But look, this is a war that never should have started. If we had a leader in this war, he led everybody along. He's given $200 billion now or more to Ukraine. He's given $200 billion. That's a lot of money. I don't think there's ever been anything like it. Every time that Zelensky comes to this country, he walks away with $60 billion. He's the greatest salesman ever. And I'm not knocking him. I'm not knocking anything. I'm only saying the money that we're spending on this war, and we shouldn't be spending, it should have never happened. I will have that war settled between Putin and Zelensky as president-elect before I take office on January 20th. I'll have that war settled. People being killed so needlessly, so stupidly, and I will get it settled, and I'll get it settled fast before I take office.
President Biden, you have a minute.
The fact is that Putin is a war criminal. He's killed thousands and thousands of people. And he has made one thing clear. He wants to reestablish what was part of the Soviet Empire, not just a piece. He wants all of Ukraine. That's what he wants. And then you think he'll stop there? Do you think he'll stop when if he takes Ukraine? What do you think happens to Poland? What do you think of Belarus? What do you think happens to those NATO countries? And so if you want a war, you ought to find out what he's going to do, because if in fact he does what he says and walks away, by the way, all that money we give Ukraine are from weapons we make here in the United States. We give them the weapons, not the money at this point. And our NATO allies have produced as much funding for Ukraine as we have. That's why we're strong.
Thank you. Moving on to the Middle East. In October, Hamas attacked Israel, killing more than 1,000 people and taking hundreds of hostages. Among those held and thought to still be alive are 5 Americans. Israel's response has killed thousands of Palestinians and created a humanitarian crisis in Gaza. President Biden, you've put forward a proposal to resolve this conflict, but so far Hamas has not released the remaining hostages, and Israel is continuing its military offensive in Gaza. So what additional leverage will you use to get Hamas and Israel to end the war? You have 2 minutes.
Number one, everyone from the United Nations Security Council straight through to the G7 to the Israelis and Netanyahu himself have endorsed the plan I put forward. Which has 3 stages to it. The first stage is trade the hostages for a ceasefire. Second phase is a ceasefire with additional conditions. The third phase is the end of the war. The only one who wants the war to continue is Hamas. Number one, they're the only ones standing out. We're still pushing hard to get them to accept. In the meantime, what's happened in Israel? We're finding that the only thing I've denied Israel was 2,000-pound bombs. They don't work very well in populated areas. They kill a lot of innocent people. We're providing Israel with all the weapons they need and when they need them. And by the way, I'm the guy that organized the world against Iran when they had a full-blown intercontinental ballistic missile attack on Israel. No one was hurt. No one Israeli was accidentally killed, and it just stopped. We saved Israel. We are the biggest producer of support for Israel of anyone in the world. And so there are 2 different things. Hamas cannot be allowed to be continued. We continue to send our experts and our intelligence people as to how they can get Hamas like we did bin Laden. You don't have to do it. And by the way, they've been greatly weakened, Hamas, greatly weakened, and they should be. They should be eliminated. But you've got to be careful for using certain weapons among population centers.
Just going back to Ukraine for 1 second. We have an ocean separating us. The European nations together have spent $100 billion, or maybe more than that, less than us. Why doesn't he call them and say, you got to put up your money like I did with NATO? I got them to put up hundreds of billions of dollars. The Secretary General of NATO said Trump did the most incredible job I've ever seen. They wouldn't have any, they were going out of business. We were spending almost 100% of the money was paid by us. He didn't do that. He's getting you got to ask these people to put up the money. We're over $100 billion more spent, and it has a bigger impact on them because of location, because we have an ocean in between. You got to ask them. As far as Israel and Hamas, Israel's the one that wants to go. He said the only one that wants to keep going is Hamas. Actually, Israel is the one, and you should let him go and let him finish the job. He doesn't want to do it. He's become like a Palestinian, but they don't like him because he's a very bad Palestinian. He's a weak one.
President Biden, you have a minute.
I've never heard so much foolishness. This is a guy who wants to get out of NATO. Are you going to stay in NATO? He's going to pull out of NATO. The idea that we have our strength lies in our alliances as well. It may be a big ocean, but we're ever able to avoid a war in Europe, a major war in Europe? What happens if, in fact, you have Putin continue to go into NATO? We have an Article 5 agreement. Attack on one is attack on all. You want to start the nuclear war he keeps talking about, go ahead. Let Putin go in and control Ukraine and then move on to Poland and other places. You see what happens then. He has no idea what the hell he's talking about. And by the way, I got 50 other nations around the world to support Ukraine, including Japan and South Korea, because they understand that this kind of dislocation has a serious threat to the whole world peace. No major war in Europe has ever been able to be contained just to Europe.
President Trump, just to follow up, would you support the creation of an independent Palestinian state in order to achieve peace in the region?
I'd have to see. But before we do that, the problem we have is that we spend all the money. So they kill us on trade. I made great trade deals with the European nations because if you add them up, they're about the same size economically. Their economy is about the same size as the United States. And they were no cars, no, they don't want anything that we have, but we're supposed to take their cars, their food, their everything, their agriculture. I changed that. But the big thing I changed is they don't want to pay. And the only reason that he can play games with NATO is because I got them to put up hundreds of billions of dollars. I said, and he's right about this, I said, no, I'm not going to support NATO if you don't pay. They asked me that question, would you guard us against Russia at a very secret meeting of the 28 states at that time, nations at that time? And they said, no, if you don't pay, I won't do that. And you know what happened? Billions and billions of dollars came flowing in the next day and the next months. But now we're in the same position. We're paying everybody's bills.
Let's turn to the issue of democracy. Former President Trump, I want to ask you about January 6, 2021. After you rallied your supporters that day, some of them stormed the Capitol to stop the constitutionally mandated counting of electoral votes. As president, you swore an oath to, quote, preserve, protect, and defend, unquote, the Constitution. What do you say to voters who believe that you violated that oath through your actions and inaction on January 6th and worry that you'll do it again?
Well, I don't think too many believe that. And let me tell you about January 6th. On January 6th, we had a great border. Nobody coming through, very few. On January 6th, we were energy independent. On January 6th, we had the lowest taxes ever. We had the lowest regulations ever. On January 6th, we were respected all over the world. All over the world, we were respected. And then he comes in, and we're now laughed at. We're like a bunch of stupid people. That what happened to the United States' reputation under this man's leadership is horrible, including weaponization, which I'm sure at some point you'll be talking about, where he goes after his political opponent because he can't beat him fair and square.
You have 80 seconds left. My question was, what do you say to those voters who believe that you violated your constitutional oath through your actions and inaction on January 6, 2021, and worry that you'll do it again?
Well, I didn't say that to anybody. I said peacefully and patriotically. And Nancy Pelosi, if you just watched the news from 2 days ago, on tape to her daughter, who's a documentary filmmaker, they say, but she's saying, oh, no, it's my responsibility. I was responsible for this because I offered her 10,000 soldiers or National Guard, and she turned them down. And the mayor of, in writing, by the way, the mayor in writing turned it down, the mayor of D.C. They turned it down. I offered 10,000 because I could see, I had virtually nothing to do. They asked me to go make a speech. I could see what was happening. Everybody was saying they're going to be there on January 6th. They're going to be there. And I said, you know what? There's a lot of people coming. You could feel it. You could feel it too, and you could feel it. And I said, they ought to have some National Guard or whatever. And I offered it to her. And she now admits that she turned it down. And it was the same day she was, I don't know, she can't be very happy with her daughter because it made her into a liar. She said, I take full responsibility for January 6th.
President Biden?
Look, he encouraged those folks to go up on Capitol Hill, number one. I sat in the dining room off the Oval Office. He sat there for 3 hours watching, begging, being begged by his vice president and a number of his colleagues on the Republican side as well to do something, to call for a stop, to end it. Instead, they talked about these people being patriots and great patrons of America. In fact, he says he'll now forgive them for what they've done. They've been convicted. He says he wants to commute their sentences and say that no. But he went to every single court in the nation. I don't know how many cases, scores of cases, including the Supreme Court. And they said, no, this guy is responsible for doing what was done. He did do a damn thing. And these people should be in jail. And they should be the ones who are being held accountable. And he wants to let them all out. And now he says if he loses again, such a whiner that he is, that it could be a bloodbath.
Thank you, President Biden. President Trump?
What they've done to some people that are so innocent, you ought to be ashamed of yourself. What you have done, how you've destroyed the lives of so many people. When they ripped down Portland, when they ripped down many other cities, you go to Minnesota, Minneapolis, what they've done there, with the fires all over the city. If I didn't bring in the National Guard, that city would have been destroyed. When you look at all of the they took over big chunks of Seattle. I was all set to bring in the National Guard. They heard that, they saw them coming, and they left immediately. What he said about this whole subject is so off. Peacefully patriotic. One other thing, the Unselect Committee, which is basically two. They ripped down many other cities. You go to Minnesota, Minneapolis, what they've done there with the fires all over the city. If I didn't bring in the National Guard, that city would have been destroyed. When you look at all of they took over big chunks of Seattle. I was all set to bring in the National Guard. They heard that, they saw them coming, and they left immediately. What he said about this whole subject is so off. Peacefully patriotic. One other thing, the Unselect Committee, which is basically two horrible Republicans that are all gone now, out of office, and Democrats, all Democrats, they destroyed and deleted all of the information they found because they found out we were right. We were right. And they deleted and destroyed all of the information. They should go to jail for that. If a Republican did that, they'd go to jail.
Thank you, President Trump. President Biden, I want to give you a minute.
The only person on this stage is a convicted felon is the man I'm looking at right now. And the fact of the matter is, what he's telling you is simply not true. The fact is that there was no effort on his part to stop what was going on up in Capitol Hill. And all those people, every one of those who were convicted, deserves to be convicted. The idea that they didn't kill somebody, just went in and broke down doors, broke the windows, occupied offices, turned over desks, turned over statues. The idea that those people are patriots, come on. When I asked him the first two debates we had, first time around, I said, will you denounce the Proud Boys? He said, no, I'll tell them to stand by. The idea he's refusing, will you denounce these guys? Will you denounce the people we're talking about now? Will you denounce the people who attacked that Capitol? What are you going to do?
I'm going to give you a minute, President Trump, for a follow-up question I have. After a jury convicted you of 34 felonies last month, you said if reelected, you would, quote, have every right to go after, unquote, your political opponents. You just talked about members of the Select Committee on January 6th going to jail. Your main political opponent is standing on stage with you tonight. Can you clarify exactly what it means about you feeling you have every right to go after your political opponents?
Well, I said my retribution is going to be success. We're going to make this country successful again, because right now it's a failing nation. My retribution is going to be success. But when he talks about a convicted felon, his son is a convicted felon at a very high level. His son is convicted, going to be convicted probably numerous other times, should have been convicted. He could be a convicted felon as soon as he gets out of office. Joe could be a convicted felon with all of the things that he's done. He's done horrible things. All of the death caused at the border, telling the Ukrainian people that we're going to want $1 billion or you change the prosecutor. Otherwise, you're not getting $1 billion. If I ever said that, that's quid pro quo. That we're not going to do anything. We're not going to give you $1 billion unless you change your prosecutor, having to do with the son. This man is a criminal. This man, you're lucky. You're lucky. I did nothing wrong. We'd have a system that was rigged and disgusting. I did nothing wrong.
Thank you, President Trump. President Biden, you have said, I'm coming right to you, sir. Well, you want to respond? Go ahead. I'll give you a minute to respond.
The idea that I did anything wrong relative to what you're talking about is outrageous. It's simply a lie, number one. Number two, the idea that you have a right to seek retribution against any American just because you're president is wrong. It's simply wrong. No president's ever spoken like that before. No president in our history has spoken like that before. Number three, the crimes that you are still charged with, and think of all the civil penalties you have. How many billions of dollars do you owe in civil penalties for molesting a woman in public, for doing a whole range of things, of having sex with a porn star on the night while your wife was pregnant? I mean, what are you talking about? You have the morals of an alley cat.
Give you a minute, sir.
I didn't have sex with a porn star, number one. Number two, that was a case that was started and moved. They moved a high-ranking official, a DOJ, into the Manhattan DA's office to start that case. That case is going to be appealed and won. We had a very terrible judge, a horrible judge, Democrat. The prosecutor were all high-ranking Democrats, appointed people. and both the civil and the criminal. He basically went after his political opponent because he thought it was going to damage me. But when the public found out about these cases, because they understand it better than he does, he has no idea what these cases are. But when they found out about these cases, you know what they did? My poll numbers went up, way up. You know that because you're reporting it. And we took in more money in the last 2 weeks than we've ever taken in the history of any campaign. I don't think any campaign has ever taken. Hundreds of millions of dollars came pouring in because the public knows it's a scam and it's a guy that's after his political opponent because he can't win fair and square.
Thank you, President Trump. President Biden, you have said, quote, Donald Trump and his MAGA Republicans are determined to destroy American democracy. Do you believe that the tens of millions of Americans who are likely to vote for President Trump will be voting against American democracy?
The more they know about what he's done, yes. The more they know about what he's done. And there's a lot more coming. He's got a lot of cases down the road coming around. He's got a whole range of issues he has to face. I don't know what the juries will do, but I do know he has a real problem. And so the fact that, could you ever think you heard any president say that I'm going to seek retribution? Do you ever hear any president say that I thought Hitler had some good ideas? What got me involved to run in the first place after my son had died, I decided in Iraq, because of Iraq, I said I wasn't going to run again until I saw what happened in Charlottesville, Virginia. People coming out of the woods carrying swastikas on torches, and singing the same anti-Semitic bile they sang when back in Germany. And the young woman got killed. I spoke to the mother, and they asked him, they said, what do you think of those people? The ones who got killed, the one who tried to stop it, and the ones, he said, I think they're fine people on both sides. What American president would ever say Nazis coming out of fields, carrying torches, singing the same anti-Semitic bile, carrying swastikas were fine people? This is a guy who says Hitler's done some good things. I'd like to know what they are. The good things Hitler's done, that's what he said. This guy has no sense of American democracy.
President Trump.
Jake, both of you know that story has been totally wiped out because when you see the sentence, it said 100% exoneration on this. So he just keeps it going. He says he ran because of Charlottesville. He didn't run because of Charlottesville. He ran because it was his last chance. He's not equipped to be president. You know it, and I know it. It's ridiculous. We have a debate. We're trying to justify his presidency. His presidency, he's without question the worst president, the worst presidency in the history of our country. We shouldn't be having a debate about it. There's nothing to debate. He made up the Charlottesville story, and you'll see it's debunked all over the place. Every reasonable anchor has debunked it. And just the other day, it came out where it was fully debunked. It's a nonsense story. He knows that, and he didn't run because of Charlottesville. He used that as an excuse to run.
President Biden.
And debunked. It happened. All you have to do is listen to what was said at the time. And the idea that somehow that's the only reason I ran because I was worried a guy like this guy could get elected. If he thought they were good people coming out of that forest, carrying those woods, carrying those torches, then he didn't deserve to be president. Didn't deserve to be president at all. And the idea that he's talking about all this being fabricated, we saw with our own eyes. We saw what happened on January 6th. We saw the people breaking through the windows. We saw people occupying his own vice president. Look, there's a reason why 40 of his 44 top cabinet officers refused to endorse him this time. His vice president hasn't endorsed him this time. So why? Why? They know him well. They serve with him. Why are they not endorsing him?
Thank you, President Biden. We're going to be right back with more from the CNN presidential debate.
Peace, family. It's your brother, Marc Lamont Hill. I'm here, as you see. We're on a quick break. I'm sorry, I was debriefing with my wife about the debate. It has been fascinating to watch. If it was a fight, they probably would have stopped it. Biden early on, he got out of the gates really slow. His voice is gravelly. His words weren't quite coherent. And Donald Trump was as sharp and coherent as I've ever heard him. He was lying. And he was saying a lot of things that were misrepresented the facts in his history, the greatest economy ever. But he managed to be sharp. I've never seen him seem so smart, so clear-headed, in such a command of facts, data, counterpoints. He got off track and went back into Trumpville toward the middle. He got in the muck and mire, the pettiness. But those first 20 minutes were as strong an outing as I've ever seen from Trump. He actually sounded like somebody who knew what they were talking about. And Biden took a minute to get his footing, but he's been hitting them with them jabs now. He's been hitting them with the felony arguments. He's been talking about, he said he had the morals of an alley cat. You know, he went there. Anyway, the debate's back on, and we'll give you more coverage. I'll see you at the end.
Far less than white families. Black mothers are still 3 times more likely to die from pregnancy-related causes, and Black Americans are imprisoned at 5 times the rate of white Americans. What do you say to Black voters who are disappointed that you haven't made more progress?
They acknowledge they made a lot of progress, number one. The fact of the matter is there's more small Black businesses that have been started than any time in history. Number two, the wages of Black unemployment is the lowest level it's been in a long, long time. Number three, we're providing housing for Black Americans and dealing with the segregation that exists among these corporations that collude to keep people out of their houses. In addition to that, we find that the impact on the choice that Black families have to make relative to childcare is incredibly difficult. When we did the first major piece of legislation in the past, I was able to reduce Black childcare costs. I cut them in half. We got to make sure we provide for childcare costs. We got to make sure, because when you provide those childcare protections, you increase economic growth because more people can be in the job market. So there's more to be done, considerably more to be done. But we've done a great deal so far, and I'm not letting up, and they know it.
You have 49 seconds left. What do you say to Black voters who are disappointed with the progress so far?
I say I don't blame them for being disappointed. Inflation is still hurting them badly. For example, I provided for the idea that any Black family first-time home buyer should get a $10,000 tax credit to be able to buy their first home so they can get started. I made sure that we're in a situation where all those Black families and those Black individuals who had to take out student loans that were ballooning, that if they were engaged in nursing, doctor, and anything having to do with volunteerism, if they paid their bills for 10 years on their student debt, all the rest is forgiven after 10 years. Millions have benefited from that. And we're going to do a whole lot more for Black families.
Thank you, President Trump.
And he caused the inflation. He's blaming inflation, and he's right. It's been very bad. He caused the inflation, and it's killing Black families and Hispanic families and just about everybody. It's killing people. They can't buy groceries anymore. They can't. You look at the cost of food where it's doubled and tripled and quadrupled. They can't live. They're not living anymore. He caused this inflation. I gave him a country with essentially no inflation. It was perfect. It was so good. All he had to do is leave it alone. He destroyed it with his Green New scam and all this money that's being thrown out the window. He caused inflation. As sure as you're sitting there, the fact is that his big kill on the Black people is the millions of people that he's allowed to come in through the border. They're taking Black jobs now, and it could be 18, it could be 19, and even 20 million people. They're taking Black jobs, and they're taking Hispanic jobs, and you haven't seen it yet, but you're going to see something that's going to be the worst in our history.
Thank you. President Biden?
There was no inflation when I became president. You know why? The economy was flat on its back. 15% unemployment. He decimated the economy, absolutely decimated the economy. That's why there was no inflation at the time. There were no jobs. We provided thousands of millions of jobs for individuals who are in all communities, including minority communities. We made sure that they have health insurance. We have covered, the ACA has increased. I made sure that they're $8,000 per person in a family to get written off for health care. But this guy wants to eliminate that. They tried 50 times. He wants to get rid of the ACA again, and they're going to try again if they win. You find ourselves in a position where the idea that we're not doing any, we put more police on the street than any administration has. He wants to cut the cops. We're providing for equity and making sure people have a shot to make it. There's a lot going on, but in inflation, he caused it by his tremendous feasance in the way he handled the pandemic.
Thank you. Another persistent challenge is the climate crisis. 2023 was the hottest year in recorded history, and communities across the country are confronting the devastating effects of extreme heat, intensifying wildfires, stronger hurricanes, and rising sea levels. Former President Trump, you've vowed to end your opponent's climate initiatives, but will you take any action as president to slow the climate crisis?
Well, let me just go back to what he said about the police, how close the police are to him. Almost every police group in the nation from every state is supporting Donald J. Trump. Almost every police group. And what he's done to the black population is horrible, including the fact that for 10 years he called them super predators. We can't, in the 1990s, we can't forget that. Super predators was his name. And he called it to them for 10, and they've taken great offense at it. And now they see it happening. But when they see what I did for criminal justice reform and for the historically black colleges and universities, where I funded them and got them all funded, and the opportunity zones with Tim, as you know, Tim Scott was incredible. He did a great job, great senator from South Carolina. He came to me with the idea, and it was a great idea. It's one of the most successful economic development acts ever in the country, opportunity zones. And the biggest beneficiary are blacks. And that's why we have the best numbers with them in maybe ever. They're saying ever. I read this morning where ever, the best numbers. He's lost much of the black population because he's done a horrible job for black people. He's also done a horrible job for Hispanics. But wait till you see these millions of people pouring into our country, and they're going to take the jobs. And it's already started, and you haven't seen anything yet. It's a disaster.
You've 38 seconds left. President Trump, will you take any action as president to slow the climate crisis?
So I want absolutely immaculate clean water, and I want absolutely clean air. And we had it. We had H2O. We had the best numbers ever. And we were using all forms of energy, all forms, everything. And yet, during my 4 years, I had the best environmental numbers ever. And my top environmental people gave me that statistic just before I walked on the stage, actually.
I don't know where the hell he's been. The idea that anything he said is true. I've passed the most extensive climate change legislation in history. We find ourselves, and by the way, black colleges, I came up with $15 billion for HBCUs, historic black universities and colleges, because they don't have the kind of contributors that they have to build these laboratories and the like. Any black student is capable in college of doing any white student can do. They just have the money, but now they'll be able to get those jobs in high tech. We're in a situation where the idea that he is claiming to have done something that had the cleanest water, he hadn't done a damn thing for the environment. He pulled out of the Paris Peace Accord, Climate Accord. I immediately joined it because if we reach 1.5 degrees Celsius at any one point, there's no way back. The only existential threat to humanity is climate change. And he didn't do a damn thing about it. He wants to undo all that I've done.
The Paris Accord was going to cost us $1 trillion, and China nothing, and Russia nothing, and India nothing. It was a ripoff of the United States. And I ended it because I didn't want to waste that money because they treat us horribly. We were the only ones. It was costing us money. Nobody else was paying into it. And it was a disaster. But everything that he said just now, I'll give you an example. I heard him say before insulin. I'm the one that got the insulin down for the seniors. I took care of the seniors. What he's doing is destroying all of our medical programs because the migrants coming in, they want everybody. And look, I have the biggest heart on the stage. I guarantee you that. And I want to take care of people. But we're destroying our country. They're taking over our schools, our hospitals, and they're going to be taking over Social Security. He is destroying Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid.
The idea is that we, in fact, we were the only ones of consequence who were not members of the Paris Accord. How can we do anything? We're not able to, the United States can't get its under control. One of the largest polluters in the world, Number one, we're making significant progress. By 2035, we will have cut pollution in half. We have made significant progress, and we're continuing to make progress. We set up a climate corps for thousands of young people will learn how to deal with climate, just like the Peace Corps. And we're moving in directions that are going to significantly change the elements of cause of pollution. But the idea that he claims that he has the biggest heart up here and he's really concerned about pollution and about climate, I've not seen any indication of that. And by the way, with regard to prescription drugs, one company agreed that they would reduce the price to $35, which I was calling for, one, voluntarily. I made sure every company in the world, every pharmaceutical company, cannot have to pay.
Thank you.
And by the way,
So every day, millions of Americans struggle just to make ends meet. For many older Americans, Social Security provides a critical lifeline. President Biden, if nothing is done to Social Security, seniors will see their benefits cut in just over 10 years. Will you name tonight one specific step that you're willing to take to keep Social Security solvent?
yes, make the very wealthy begin to pay their fair share. Right now, everybody making under $170,000 pays 6% of their income, of their paycheck, every single time they get a paycheck from the time the first one they get when they're 18 years old. The idea that they're going to, I'm proposing that everybody, the millionaires pay 1%. 1%. So no one I would not raise the cost of Social Security for anybody under $400,000. After that, I began to make the wealthy begin to pay their fair share by increasing from 1% beyond to be able to guarantee the program for life.
So you still have 82 seconds left. Are there any other measures that you think that would be able to help keep Social Security solvent, or is that one enough?
Well, no, that one enough will keep it solvent. But the biggest thing I'll do if we defeat this man, because he wants to get rid of Social Security. He thinks there's plenty to cut in Social Security. He's wanting to cut Social Security and Medicare both times. And and if you look at the program put forward by the House Republican caucus that I believe supports, is in fact want to cut it as well. The idea that we don't need to protect our seniors is ridiculous. And by the way, the American public has greater health care coverage today than ever before. And on the ACA, as I said, you're in a circumstance where 400,000 people, 40 million people would not have insurance because they have a pre-existing condition. Only thing that allows them to have that insurance is the fact that they, in fact, are part of the ACA. And by the way, the other thing is we're in a situation where I talk about education for Black communities. I've raised the amount of money for Pell Grants by another $8,000. So anybody making under $70,000 a year is going to be able to get $15,000 toward their tuition. He just doesn't know what he's talking about.
Thank you, President Biden. President Trump.
So I've dealt with politicians all my life. I've been on this side of the equation for the last 8 years. I've never seen anybody lie like this guy. He lies. I've never seen it. He can look you in the face about so many other things too. And we mentioned the laptop. We mentioned Russia, Ukraine. Everything he does is a lie. It's misinformation and disinformation. The losers and suckers story that he made up is a total lie on the military. It's a disgrace. But Social Security, he's destroying it because millions of people are pouring into our country and they're putting them onto Social Security. They're putting them onto Medicare, Medicaid. They're putting them in our hospitals. They're taking the place of our citizens. What they're doing to the VA, to our veterans, is unbelievable. Our veterans are living in the street, and these people are living in luxury hotels. He doesn't know what he's doing, and it's really coming back. I've never seen such anger in our country before.
President Biden.
The idea that veterans are not being taken care of, I told you before. And by the way, when I said suckers and losers, he acknowledged after that he fired that general. That general got fired because he's the one that acknowledged that that's what he said. He was the one standing with Trump when he said it, number one. Number two, the idea that we're going to be in a situation where all these millions and millions, the way he talks about it, illegal aliens are coming into the country and taking away our jobs. There's a reason why we have the fastest growing economy in the world, the reason why we have the most successful economy in the world. We're doing better than any other nation in the world. And by the way, those 15 Nobel laureates he talked about being phony, those 15 Nobel laureates, economists, they all said that if Trump is reelected, we're likely to have a recession and inflation is going to increasingly go up. And by the way, worst president in history, 159 presidential scholars voted him the worst president in the history of the United States of America.
President Biden, thank you so much. Let's turn to the cost of child care, which many American families struggle to afford. President Trump, both you and President Biden have tried to address this issue, but the average cost of child care in this country has risen to more than $11,000 a year per child. For many families, the cost of child care for 2 children is more than their rent. In your second term, what would you do to make child care more affordable?
Just to go back, the general got fired because he was no good. And if he said that, that's why he made it up. But we have 19 people that said I didn't say it, and they're very highly respected, much more so than him. The other thing is, he doesn't fire people. He never fired people. I've never seen him fire anybody. I did fire a lot. I fired Comey because he was no good. I fired a lot of the top people at the FBI, drained the swamp. They were no good. Not easy to fire people. You'd pay a price for it, but they were no good. I inherited these people. I didn't put them there. I didn't put Comey there. He was no good. I fired him. This guy hasn't fired anybody. He never fires. He should have fired every military man that was involved with that the Afghanistan horror show, the most embarrassing moment in the history of our country. He didn't fire. Did you fire anybody? Did you fire anybody that's on the border that's allowed us to have the worst border in the history of the world? Did anybody get fired for allowing 18 million people, many from prisons, many from mental institutions? Did you fire anybody that allowed our country to be destroyed? Joe, our country is being destroyed as you and I sit up here and waste a lot of time on this debate. This shouldn't be a debate. He is the worst president. He just said about me because I said it. But look, he's the worst president in the history of our country. He's destroyed our country. Now, all of a sudden, he's trying to get a little tough on the border. He came out with a nothing deal, and it reduced it a little bit, like this much. It's insignificant. He wants open borders. He wants our country to either be destroyed or he wants to pick up those people as voters. And I don't think we just can't let it happen. If he wins this election, our country doesn't have a chance, not even a chance, of coming out of this rut. We probably won't have a country left anymore. That's how bad it is. He is the worst in history by far.
Thank you, President Trump. President Biden?
We're the most admired country in the world. We're the United States of America. There's nothing beyond our capacity. We have the finest military in the history of the world, the finest in the history of the world. No one thinks we're weak. No one wants to screw around with us. Nobody, number one. Number two, the idea that we're talking about worst presidents. I wasn't joking. Look it up. Go online. 159 or 58, don't hold me the exact number, presidential historians, they've had meetings and they voted who's the worst president in American history. One through best to worst. They said he was the worst in all of American history. That's a fact. That's not conjecture. He can argue they're wrong, but that's what they voted. The idea that he is doing anything to deal with child care, he did virtually nothing to child care. We should significantly increase the child care tax credit. We should significantly increase the availability of women and men or single parents to be able to go back to work. And we should encourage businesses to have.
Thank you, President Biden. President Trump, the question was about what would you do to make child care more affordable, if you want to take your minute.
Just so you understand, we have polling, we have other things that they rate him the worst because what he's done is so bad. And they rate me, I'll show you, I will show you. And they rate me one of the best, okay? And if I'm given another 4 years, I will be the best. I think I'll be the best. Nobody's ever created an economy like us. Nobody ever cut taxes like us. He's the only one I know. He wants to raise your taxes by 4 times. He wants to raise everybody's taxes by 4 times. He wants the Trump tax cuts to expire. So everybody, including the 2 of you, are going to pay 4 to 5 times. Nobody ever heard of this before. All my life, I'd grow up and I'd see politicians talking about cutting taxes. When we cut taxes, as I said, we did more business. Apple and all these companies, they were bringing money back into our country. The worst president in history by far, and everybody knows it.
President Biden?
Look, the fact of the matter is that he's dead wrong about, he's increased the tariff, he will increase the taxes on middle-class people. I said I'd never raise a tax on anybody making less than $400,000. I didn't. But this tariff is 10% tariffs. Everything coming into the country, you know what the economists say? That's going to cost the average American $2,500 a year more, because they're going to have to pay the difference in food and all the things that are very important. Number two, he's in a situation where he talks about how he has not raised, he's somehow helped the middle class. Middle class have been devastated by you. Now you want a new tax cut of $5 trillion over the next 10 years, which is going to fundamentally bankrupt the country. You had the largest deficit of any president in American history, number one. Number two, you have not, in fact, made any contact, any progress with China. We are at the lowest trade deficit with China since 2010.
Thank you,
were at the
President Biden.
highest. You lost
Thank you, President
$160,000.
Biden. Let's discuss an epidemic impacting millions of Americans that both of you have made a top priority in your first term, the opioid crisis. And for both of you, the number of overdose deaths in this country has gone up. Under your term, it went up. Under your term, it has gone up. Former President Trump, despite the efforts that both of you have made, more than 100,000 Americans are dying from overdoses every year, primarily from fentanyl and other opioids. What will you do to help Americans right now in the throes of addiction who are struggling to get the treatment they need?
To finish up, we now have the largest deficit in the history of our country under this guy. We have the largest deficit with China. He gets paid by China. He's a Manchurian candidate. He gets money from China. So I think he's afraid to deal with them or something. But do you notice he never took out my tariffs, because we bring in so much money with the tariffs that I imposed on China. He never took them away. He can't, because it's too much money. It's tremendous. And we saved our steel industries, and there was more to come, but he hasn't done that. But he hasn't cut the tariffs because he can't, because it's too much money. But he's got the largest deficit in the history of our country, and he's got the worst situation with China. China's going to own us if you keep allowing them to do what they're doing to us as a country. They are killing us as a country, Joe, and you can't let that happen. You're destroying our country.
So, President Trump, you have 67 seconds left. The question was, what are you going to do to help Americans in the throes of addiction right now who are struggling to get the treatment they need?
Jake, we were doing very well at addiction until the COVID came along. We had the 2.5, almost 3 years of like nobody's ever had before, any country, in every way. And then we had to get tough. And it was the drugs pouring across the border it started to increase. We got great equipment. We bought the certain dog that's the most incredible thing that you've ever seen, the way they can spot it. We did a lot. And we were getting very low numbers, very, very low numbers. Then he came along. The numbers, have you seen the numbers now? It's not only the 18 million people that I believe is even low, because the gotaways, they don't even talk about gotaways. But the numbers of the amount of drugs and human trafficking in women coming across our border, the worst thing I've ever seen, at numbers that nobody's ever seen under him, because the border's so bad. But the number of drugs coming across our border now is the largest we've ever had by far.
President Trump, thank you. President Biden?
Fentanyl and the byproducts of fentanyl went down for a while. And I wanted to make sure we use the machinery that can detect fentanyl, these big machines that roll over everything that comes across the border. And it costs a lot of money. That was part of this deal we put together, this bipartisan deal. More fentanyl machines, more be able to detect drugs, more numbers of agents, more numbers of all the people at the border. And when we had that deal done, he called his Republican colleagues, said, "Don't do it. It's going to hurt me politically." No, he never argued it's not a good bill. It's a really good bill. We need those machines. We need those machines. And we're coming down very hard in every country in Asia in terms of precursors for fentanyl. And Mexico is working with us to make sure they don't have the technology to be able to put it together. That's what we have to do. We need those machines.
Thank you, President Biden. President Trump, and again, the question is about Americans in the throes of addiction right now, struggling to get the treatment they need.
Well, this does pertain to it. He ended Remain in Mexico. He ended catch and release. I made it catch and release in Mexico, not catch and release here. We had so many things that we had done, hard negotiations with Mexico, and I got it all for nothing. It's just like when you have a hostage. We always pay $6 billion for a hostage. Every time we say it's a hostage. Now we have a hostage, the Wall Street Journal reporter. I think, a good guy. And he's over there because Putin is laughing at this guy, probably asking for billions of dollars for the reporter. I will have him out very quickly as soon as I take office. Before I take office, I said, by literally as soon as I win the election, I will have that reporter out. He should have had him out a long time ago. But Putin's probably asking for billions and billions of dollars because this guy pays it every time. We had 2 cases where he paid $6 billion for 5 people. I got 58 people out, and I paid essentially nothing.
Thank you, President Trump. Dana?
Let's turn to concerns that voters have about each of you. President Biden, you would be 86 at the end of your 2nd term. How do you address concerns about your capability to handle the toughest job in the world well into your 80s?
Well, first of all, I spent half my career being criticized being the youngest person in politics. I was the 2nd youngest person ever elected to the United States Senate, and now I'm the oldest. This guy's 3 years younger and a lot less competent. I think that just look at the record. Look at what I've done. Look how I've turned around the horrible situation he left me. As I said, 15 million new jobs, 800,000 manufacturing jobs, more investment in America, over billions of dollars in private investment in enterprises that we are growing. By the way, we brought off a lot of people. Well, the whole idea of computer chips, we used to have 40% of the market. We invented those chips, and we lost it because he was sending people to find the cheapest jobs overseas and then bring home a product. So I went to South Korea. I convinced Samsung to invest billions of dollars here in the United States, and guess what? Those fabs they call that to build these chips, those fabs pay over $100,000. You don't need a college degree for them. And there's billions, about $40 billion already being invested and being built right now in the United States, creating significant jobs for Americans from all over the world.
President Biden, you have 40 seconds left. Would you like to add anything?
Yeah, I would. The idea that somehow we are this failing country. I never heard a president talk like this before. We're the envy of the world. Name me a single major country president who wouldn't trade places with the United States of America for all our problems and all our opportunities. We're the most progressive country in the world in getting things done. We're the strongest country in the world. We're a country in the world who keeps our word, and everybody trusts us, all of our allies, and those who he coddles up to, from Kim Jong-un, he sends love letters to, and Putin, et cetera. They don't want to screw around with us.
Thank you. Former President Trump, to follow up, you would be 82 at the end of your 2nd term. What do you say to voters who have concerns about your capabilities to serve?
Well, I took 2 tests, cognitive tests. I aced them, both of them, as you know. We made it public. He took none. I'd like to see him take one, just one, a real easy one. Like go through the first 5 questions. He couldn't do it. But I took 2 cognitive tests. I took physical exams every year. And, we knock on wood wherever we may have wood, that I'm in very good health. I just won 2 club championships, not even senior, 2 regular club championships. To do that, you have to be quite smart, and you have to be able to hit the ball a long way. And I do it. He doesn't do it. He can't hit a ball 50 yards. He challenged me to a golf match. He can't hit a ball 50 yards. I think I'm in very good shape. I feel that I'm as in good a shape as I was 25, 30 years ago. Actually, I'm probably a little bit lighter, but I'm in as good a shape as I was years ago. I feel very good. I feel the same. But I was willing to take a cognitive test. And you know what? If I didn't do well, I aced him. Dr. Ronnie Jackson, who's a great guy when he was White House doctor. And then I took another one, a similar one. And one of them said they've never seen anybody ace him.
Thank you. President Biden?
You can see he is 6'5" and only 223 pounds, or 235 pounds. Well, you said 6'4", 200. Well, anyway, anyway, just take a look at what he says he is and take a look at what he is. Look, I'd be happy to have a driving contest with him. The reason I got my handicap, which when I was vice president, down to a 6. But by the way, I told you before, I'm happy to play golf if you carry your own bag. Think you can do it?
That's the biggest lie. That he's a 6 handicap of all.
I was an 8 handicap.
Yeah.
8.
Never.
But I have, how many?
I've seen you swing. I know you swing.
Okay, let's
not act like children.
President Trump, we're going to
21
turn
Let's not act like children.
You
to
are
a
child.
specific concern that voters have about you. Will you pledge tonight that once all legal challenges have been exhausted, that you will accept the results of this election, regardless of who wins, and you will say right now that political violence in any form is unacceptable?
Well, I shouldn't have to say that, but of course I believe that. It's totally unacceptable. And if you would see my statements that I made on Twitter at the time, and also my statement that I made in the Rose Garden, you would say it's one of the strongest statements you've ever seen. In addition to the speech I made in front of, I believe, the largest crowd I've ever spoken to. And I will tell you, nobody ever talks about that. They talk about a relatively small number of people that went to the Capitol and in many cases were ushered in by the police. And as Nancy Pelosi said, it was her responsibility, not mine. She said that loud and clear. But the answer is, if the election is fair, free, and I want that more than anybody. And I'll tell you something. I wish he was a great president, because I wouldn't be here right now. I'd be at one of my many places enjoying myself. I wouldn't be under indictment because I wouldn't have been his political opponent, because he indicted me because I was his opponent. I wish he was a great president. I would rather have that. I wouldn't be here. I don't mind being here. But the only reason I'm here is he's so bad as a president that I'm going to make America great again. We're going to make America great again. We're a failing nation right now. We're a seriously failing nation. And we're a failing nation because of him. His policies are so bad. His military policies are insane. They're insane. These are wars that will never end with him. He will drive us into World War III. And we're closer to World War III than anybody can imagine. We are very, very close to World War III, and he's driving us there. And Kim Jong-un and President Xi of China, Kim Jong-un of North Korea, all of these, Putin, they don't respect him. They don't fear him. They have nothing going with this gentleman, and he's going to drive us into World War III.
You want a World War III, let him follow and win, and let Putin say, do what you want, NATO. Just do what you want. There's a thing called Article 5. An attack on one is an attack on all, and required response. The idea, I can't think of a single major leader in the world who wouldn't trade places with the job I've done and what they've done. Because we are a powerful nation. We have wonderful people. It's because of the people, not me. It's because of the American people. They're capable of anything, and they step up when they're needed. And right now, we're needed. We're needed to protect the world because our own safety is at stake. And again, you want to have a war, just let Putin go ahead and take Kyiv, make sure they move on, see what happens in Poland, Hungary, and other places along that border. Then you have a war.
President Trump, as I come back to you for a follow-up, the question was, will you accept the results of this election, regardless of who wins?
Just to finish what he said, if I might, Russia, they took a lot of land from Bush. They took a lot of land from Obama and Biden. They took no land, nothing from Trump, nothing. He knew not to do it. He's not going to play games with me. He knew that. I got along with him very well, but he knew not to play games. He took nothing from me. But now he's going to take the whole thing from this man right here. That's a war that should have never started. It would have never started ever with me. And he's going to take Ukraine. And, you know, you asked me a question before, would you do this? He's got us in such a bad position right now with Ukraine and Russia, because Ukraine's not winning that war. He said, I will never settle until such time. They're running out of people. They're running out of soldiers. They've lost so many people. It's so sad. They've lost so many people, and they've lost those gorgeous cities with the golden domes that are 1,000 years old, all because of him and stupid decisions. Russia would have never attacked if I were
President
president.
Trump, the question was, will you accept the results of the election, regardless of who wins? Yes or no, please.
If it's a fair and legal and good election, absolutely. I would have much rather accepted these, but the fraud and everything else was ridiculous. And if you want, we'll have a news conference on it in a week, or we'll have another one of these in a week. But I will absolutely, there's nothing I'd rather do. It would be much easier for me to do that than I'm running again. I wasn't really going to run until I saw the horrible job he did. He's destroying our country. I would be very happy to be someplace else, in a nice location someplace. And again, no indictments, No political opponent stuff, because it's the only way he thinks he can win. But unfortunately, it's driven up my numbers and driven them up to a very high level because the people understand it.
Let's see what your numbers are when this election is over. Let's see. You're a whiner. When you lost the first time, you continued, you appealed and appealed to courts all across the country. Not one single court in America said any of your claims had any merit, state or local, none. But you continue to provoke this lie about somehow there's all this misrepresentation, all this stealing. There is no evidence of that at all. And I tell you what, I doubt whether you'll accept it because you're such a whiner. The idea, if you lose again, you accepting anything, you can't stand the loss. Something snapped in you when you lost the last time.
We'll be right back with more from the CNN presidential debate, live from Georgia.
Y'all got into a spicy one here. You know, it seemed like the second, I guess I don't want to call it a round, but it seemed like Joe Biden stepped up. Joe Biden warmed up. He started hitting them with the one-liners. He started hitting Donald Trump with some legitimate points. He went from policy to the range that I think, and we'll get into it with David Johns and Rebecca Azor in just a moment. But he started hitting him with some personal stuff. He called him some of the morals of an alley cat. Again, between that and malarkey, it's not like he was, like he was 100 years old. But what he was able to do, I think quite successfully, was shift the momentum and shift the balance of power a little bit on that stage. When the question came up of jobs, I didn't think that was Biden's finest moment as he talked about, black jobs. He and Trump went back and forth about black jobs. I got to ask what the hell a black job is. What makes a job a black job? That's some scary language, and we'll unpack all of that. But another thing that I think was super interesting was the question of what do you say to the black community? Biden stepped up and talked very clearly, very succinctly, I think, Biden about what his successes were and what his not and where he still had to grow. I don't know if it will persuade the audience, but he at least had an answer prepared. Actually, they're back in just a second, so I'm going to turn back over the mic in just a second to the debate podium. But when we come back, we'll have Dr. David Johns, we'll have Rebecca Azor. They're here to break it all down. It can't go much longer because these dudes is old. They're going to need a nap. In fact,
as predetermined by a coin toss, we're going to begin with you, President Biden. You have 2 minutes.
We've made significant progress from the debacle that was left by President Trump in his last term. We find ourselves in a situation where, number one, we have to make sure that we have a fair tax system. I ask anyone out there in the audience or anyone out watching this debate, do you think the tax system is fair? The fact is that I said nobody even making under $400,000 had a single penny increase in their taxes and will not. And if I'm reelected, that'll be the case again. But this guy has increased your taxes because of the deficit. Number one, he's increased inflation because of the debacle he left after the way he handled the pandemic. And he finds himself in a position where he now wants to tax you more by putting a 10% tariff on everything that comes into the United States of America. What I did when, for example, he wants to get rid of the ability of Medicare for us to be able to negotiate drug prices with the big pharma companies. Well, guess what? We got it down to $35 for insulin instead of $400. No more than $2,000 for every senior, no matter how much prescription they need. You know what that did? That reduced the federal debt by $160 billion over 10 years because the government doesn't have to pay the exorbitant prices. I'm going to make that available to every senior all along. It's happening now, and everybody in America. He wants to get rid of that. I'm going to make sure that we have child care. We're going to significantly increase the credits people have for child care. I'm going to make sure we do something about what we're doing on lead pipes and all the things that are causing health problems for people across the country. We're going to continue to fight to bring down inflation and give people a break.
Thank you, President Biden. President Trump, you now have 2 minutes for your closing statement.
Like so many politicians, this man is just a complainer. He said, we want to do this, we want to do that, we want to get rid of this tax, that tax, but he doesn't do anything. He doesn't do, all he does is make our country unsafe by allowing millions and millions of people to pour in. Our military doesn't respect him. We look like fools in Afghanistan. We didn't stop Israel. It was such a horrible thing that would have never happened. It should have never happened. Iran was broke. Anybody that did business with Iran, including China, they couldn't do business with the United States. They all passed. Iran was broke. They had no money for Hamas or Hezbollah, for terror, no money whatsoever. Again, Ukraine should have never happened. He talks about all this stuff, but he didn't do it. For 3.5 years, we're living in hell. We have the Palestinians and we have everybody else rioting all over the place. You talk about Charlottesville. This is 100 times Charlottesville, 1,000 times. The whole country is exploding because of you, because they don't respect you, and they have to respect their president, and they don't respect you throughout the world. What we did was incredible. We rebuilt the military. We got the largest tax cut in history, the largest regulation cut in history. The reason he's got jobs is because I cut the regulations that gave jobs, but he's putting a lot of those regulations back on. All of the things that we've done, nobody's never seen anything like, even from a medical standpoint, right to try, where we can try space age materials instead of going to Asia or going to Europe and trying to get, when you're terminally ill, now you can go and you can get something. You sign a document. They've been trying to get it for 42 years. But you know what we did for the military was incredible. Choice for our soldiers, where our soldiers, instead of waiting for 3 months to see a doctor, can go out and get themselves fixed up and readied up and take care of themselves, and they're living. And that's why I had the highest approval rating in the history of the VA. So all of these things, we're in a failing nation, but it's not going to be failing anymore. We're going to make it great again.
Thank you, former President Trump, President Biden. Stay with us because we have full analysis of this debate. Anderson Cooper and Aaron Burnett.
That was a kind of weird way to end the debate. I thought there'd be a little more, a little more pomp and circumstance, maybe a little more formal goodbye. But either way, that was the debate, y'all. It was long, hour and 40 minutes. It was interesting. It was provocative. There's a lot to unpack. I cannot wait to break this stuff down with my crew. Can I bring them on yet? Is it time to bring them on yet? I got two great, really brilliant people who are here to help us break down what was said, also to break down what was not said. Let's bring him on here. At the top, you know him. His name is Reverend Dr. David Johns. He is the executive director and CEO of the National Black Justice Coalition. And at the bottom, you've seen her in all kinds of media. She's a political analyst. She's a multimedia journalist. She is just a brilliant political mind, Rebecca Azor. She is here with us. Okay, y'all. I don't think I've seen a debate quite like this before.
Nope.
No.
And that ain't no compliment. So, Rebecca, I'm gonna give you the floor first. Talk to me about what you saw. What are your initial impressions about this thing?
Immediate geriatric wars, nursing home nonsense. I cannot.
Come on, alliteration.
I do not want to like go into the ageism thing and be, but no, we seen Biden shutting down, and we seen a grumpy old man with no facts in Trump, and watching Biden not be able to answer the questions, it was giving me heavy anxiety. And he can finish a sentence, formate some of the words, and the breathing. It was really hard to watch. And then just hearing Donald Trump with no statistics, child, just coming out with his own numbers, given no numbers, and the moderators too not really stepping in, questions not being answered. They just went rogue. This was a mess. This was a mess.
This definitely, David, was less managed, I'll say, than some of the other debates. Sometimes you see too much involvement from moderators. Sometimes you see too much interference, too much crosstalk. They got rid of the crosstalk with that mute button. They seem to stop the back and forth. But I didn't always have a clear sense that anybody was being held accountable for anything in this interview. But before we go there, what were your initial impressions?
I, in this moment, am struggling with a number of things related very much to your question. I want to know, and I was trying to find out how Jake Tapper and Dana Bash got this opportunity to sit with them and not hold them accountable. I'm struggling with that, especially given the Black talent that is on the network now, and the intentional way in which they have moved folks like you, Mark, and other journalists out of the way. All of that and its intentionality is not lost on me. I'm also so fucking angry at the caucasity of these two niggas on a public debate stage for the president of these United States that our ancestors built for fucking free, dueling out over golf handicaps. Like, I literally, if it were not for the fact that I agreed to be on this with you two brilliant people, and you two brother, I would have thrown this fucking computer and walked away. Like, beyond them sidestepping questions, Joe Biden being tone deaf, saying and being proud about having the most police on the street, and then not responding to the needs of Black folks, which could have included naming George Floyd, Tony McDade, Breonna Taylor, talking about how not having more support in Congress has led to or prohibited the passage of the Justice for George Floyd Policing Act. Like, there are actual things that he didn't say shit about student loans. He didn't cuff his nuts and talk shit about things that actually matter. MBJ said that we have data about. Instead, he has me literally looking for what the fuck a Black job is. I worked in the White House. I led a whole ass initiative for Obama. I wrote legislation that was signed into law, codified by presidents of both parties for the Health, Education, Labor, and Pensions Committee. I don't know what the fuck a Black job is. And if I don't know, as somebody who's positioned to help advocate to defend democracy, the last thing I'm struggling with is I don't know. I really would love to know how different all of this would be if Joseph Robinette Biden had put politic, Politik, over his personal feelings about himself. Like, that is the only thing that I feel worthy of interrogating, because that is the only thing that I think can make anything about this contest different.
You preached the whole sermon there, man. And
Absolutely.
And you said so many things that I think are important. Let me start with a very fundamental question. And I don't like to reduce debates to boxing matches or prize fights. But is it safe to say Biden lost this debate?
We lost this debate. American citizens lost this debate. And the reality is that it is akin to a prize fight. Debates, which have been normalized since the 1960s, when we think about presidential performance of debates, it's theater. Politics is a full contact sport, and it requires performance. And to the commentary you offered during the breaks, I hate to acknowledge that I think that the concessions made by the debate committee privileged the Donald.
Absolutely.
It worked to his advantage.
Mm-hmm.
And I also, to this point, want to name, we have data, nbjc.org/Black Facts, knowing how white-led institutions, white racial actors amplify white lies, like what those folks were doing on that stage. And we found that the same percentage of Black folks, 9% of Black folks across the country, are as interested in the Cornel West and Kennedy Jr. campaign as they are in the Donald campaign. And the inability for all of them to stand on that stage, to shift the way that we are thinking about what's possible for our country, is a reflection of how white supremacy works.
Absolutely. Rebecca, I saw you nodding yes when I said, did Biden lose this debate? I didn't even ask if Trump won it, just if Biden lost it.
Yeah,
Because
because,
America damn sure lost it.
you know, Trump came in, like you said, there's a form of entertainment when we watch the debates. We're looking for some heavy hitting points, talking points, something that people could take back to social media in these days, repost, retweet, something strong, right? We didn't get any of that from Joe Biden. Of course, not really answering questions. Now, of talking about abortion, started off for 2 seconds with something, didn't go with, he led in, I don't know where he was going with it. And then we were talking about, Palestine and Israel. Of course, he's going to not really answer those questions. And so I was expecting that, but I really wanted him to say something at least, because these are two huge points that we needed to hear and see what he was going to say. This is the moment. And he failed on those moments along with other ones. But I believe that he failed. Ooh, honey, it was just a train wreck. Like I tell, it's just a fool just to see, because I felt like he wasn't there. It was time to go home, put his legs up, elevate them, and take a nap. He just was not there. I know people were expecting to have VP Biden, and that's not what he gave. Now, he did show up a couple of times. I can say we got some Joe Biden there, but I know what people are expecting for him to be just, like way early 2000s, VP Biden. You're not going to get that. That's what we need to remove from our mind, those expectations. But against Donald Trump, that entertainment factor is there, and that, and it's so whack that his cult, his following, is going to eat this up with no facts, no statistics, no backing, just free lies out here. Black jobs, Hispanic jobs, absolute racism in his conversations. And blaming people like Nancy Pelosi and her daughter for January 6th. Like, all of this information, I felt like there are times when the responses, when Biden was responding, it could have been stronger, it could have been harder. And sometimes he just led with a little bit personal attacks or the name calling or whatever in those moments. And I think it could have been stronger. I think just starting out, especially for this debate, a lot of missed opportunities with Joe Biden.
Speaking of missed opportunities, again, I think the job of a moderator in a debate or a TV interview is to hold people accountable when they say things that aren't true. The last debate between Biden and Trump, we saw more of that. We saw it partially in response to 2000, when people were saying, yo, Trump is just talking. No one's checking him. People just letting Trump say anything to Hillary Clinton. So now, you in 2016, now you see something very different. You see, like, it's almost like the extremes. I'm saying that to say, Biden comes out of Trump comes out of the gate and says, we had the best economy ever. We had the best economy in American history. Now, Trump is always speaking in hyperbolic terms like that.
Mm-hmm.
Everything he ever did was the best ever. We have the perfect water. We have the best water ever. But the best economy ever. It seems to me, Rebecca, that there's a way there that somebody should be pulling up numbers. People should be talking about Black unemployment. They should be talking about Black underemployment. They should be talking about Black people who stopped looking for jobs. All these things.
Where did we stop when we start? Like, this is what I'm talking about. Media literacy, the etiquette is gone, especially here. Like, we got these moderators, absolutely. And then the way that they were, I can see that there was favoritism there. Like, even in like, you're asking Joe Biden, y'all quick to be like, okay, you get to Donald Trump and it's like you're allowing him to just do as he pleases, go rogue. And then, with Joe Biden, it's almost like, all right, Mr. President. And then and then the fact, like, y'all hear this man, the only thing that I've seen them do, they're hearing him lie, just lie to us for free. He been doing it with nothing different, but just everything he said was a lie. Never brought actual numbers, statistics. But also they would just give him another opportunity to answer the question. They let him go rogue for a long period of time and then ask him, well, so what? So here's what we really asked. Instead of saying, okay, well, that's not true. Actually, here are the numbers. And as moderators, that's what I'm used to seeing. But we're literally moving away from like stability when it comes to media and watching this. It's all a train wreck. And it's just so sad to see. But they're only there for that entertainment factor as well with Donald Trump. They know this is where we're at now. I feel like there's no seriousness. And the presidential debate about the American people, who's about to lead us, that should be very serious. And I think Nan wanted them to take it serious. No.
Just one quick fact check I want to jump in on, because Donald Trump said that, again, he oversaw the greatest economy in the history of the world. Perhaps the best argument that Trump has is unemployment, and he often will also say Black unemployment was all-time low. I mean, you can make the case that he rode the wave of Obama, and that he was rolling in on a wave that he continued. He didn't change a trend; he just continued a trend. But all that aside, most traditional measures of economic growth, beyond unemployment, wages, business investment, gross domestic product, all of these things, Trump's numbers were not just far short of being the greatest. They were mediocre. They were poor even. So when you look at, traditional measures, for example, let's look at GDP. The annual increases in GDP under Trump, they were similar to what they were the last year under Obama, because again, he was riding Obama's wave. And GDP growth under Trump was significantly, I don't have the exact number in front of me, but it was significantly lower than other presidents. I'll pull up a graphic in a minute to show you that. I'll pull one up. When you look at inflation adjusted private, non-residential fixed investment, again, these are numbers that, again, don't make Trump the worst, but they don't make him the greatest. They don't make him near the greatest. They don't even make him the middle, just to be clear. They don't even put him at the middle. The measures of economic, so that's just something that you don't have to be an expert on the economy. No, you could just pull up basic fact checking, right? CNN didn't say a word, which is strange to me. But let's keep going for a minute. Were you surprised at Biden's? And I'm not trying to be superficial here, but something is to be said about how you look, how you sound, how you move, how you appear. Trump had spent the last few days saying that Biden was going to show up, that he wanted a drug test because Trump was going to show up looking crazy and high. So we knew all eyes were going to be on Biden, David. We knew all people were going to be looking at him and saying, how does he look? How does he sound? What did you make of how he appeared?
A couple of things. One, I think that time is not always kind to those people who are not melanated. And I hate to acknowledge that because it plays into the worst parts of how we don't celebrate and support the process of aging. I also just think that when we talk about some of the challenges that he has to overcome, he's lived with the speech impediment all of his life. And it was clear that he was attempting to manage that to the best of his ability, as he always does. He is the sitting president who was dealing with managing those responsibilities, had an incredibly difficult schedule, including international travel over the last few weeks while old boy has been sitting in court. I also asked myself how one prepares for and then in real time manages the multiple personalities that exist in the Donald. And so I do think that these are, in so many ways, seemingly impossible circumstances, and someone he should rise to the occasion. And it's just a whole lot to contend with. I think the other part of this for me related to some of the other conversation is I spent a lot of time asking about the audience, right? We're talking about 6 states, 6 swing states. They call them the deciders, where 6% of the electorate in those states are going to make the decision. The reality is that most of us who are engaging in this conversation now, who watched the debate, have already picked. We've already picked a side. We understand what the stakes are, right? And so what I'm reflecting on, Mark, is that like for most folks who are undecided, all of what you said about inflation doesn't matter.
That's very true.
All of the talking points that they landed, whether or not that there's veracity behind them or not, those things don't matter.
Mm.
And so my hope is that those of us who have the ability to parse, to fact check, to distill this information, don't abdicate the responsibility to do so for people who are far away from appreciating how everything that has happened tonight will continue to affect their lives in ways that they often don't acknowledge and or provide consent for.
I think that's an important point, that the people don't necessarily, Rebecca, have the opportunity to do real-time fact checking, and they don't necessarily have the luxury of unpacking all these things in live form. It's our job to do that, but they do get to lay eyes on these people. They do get to hear how they sound. Biden, to me, looked as old, and I'm not getting into the ageism piece. I'm just saying he looked slower. He looked less sharp than I've seen him. You said it wasn't VP Joe. It wasn't even President Joe, right? It wasn't even how I saw him 2 years ago. The comments on social media, comments right here in our watch party, people came out the gate. People were like, oh boy, Biden don't sound good. Biden don't look good. How much is that going to affect voters?
Because we live in a superficial world, and we are going to be focused on those things, because when we're talking about a leader of, right, especially right now, we need a leader. This is a circus, right? Our leadership is a circus all around, through and through. At a state level, here at the presidential level, it's just not right. And so when we're, the American people they want somebody to be sharp naturally, quick-witted, and so watching Joe Biden just seemingly be elderly, he's elderly and just functioning in that way, when we talking about some like hard-hitting stuff and can't really deliver his answers correctly. It's like we want the president to be a little quicker with that. We want somebody who can be able to respond better, be a little bit more strong, have a little bit more fervor. And we've seen him like that, but we can't expect a man who's aging. He's old, and naturally older people are slower. Naturally, they're slow to respond, slow in movement. Different parts of them we're going to visibly see is just like you were saying, like, time isn't good to non-melanated people, but he's just old, right? And so I think that's going to play a part for people to say, can he do this job? Like, maybe he should sit this one out, not because he already was president, he was VP at one point. We've seen him sharp. We've seen him, but time is time. And people just, when you're older, you're just going to move slower. People naturally want somebody who's going to be just a little stronger, somebody they can trust to be quicker, whose mind seems sharp. Even in his closing remarks, we seen him freeze up, like in real time.
He was buffering a few times. He came out.
Yeah, that was throughout the whole thing. But in his closing remarks, I'm like, "Ooh, baby, get the word out." Ooh, it was really tough to see, and it was giving, like I said, it was giving me anxiety, because I'm like, I know older people in my life, and we know, like, we're like, all right, let us sit down real quick, let her get it out. She gonna, that's what it was giving, but we can't tell him that when he got to run the world, he got to run America, partner with other countries around the world, and if he can't get a word out, if he's not sturdy, if he's not remembering what he's trying to say, or it's not being able, I don't know if that's presidential right there. I don't think.
And there are people who are going to say that his age, his stuttering, his slow speech is not an index of his ability. That's and that we're being ableist and ageist. And to those people, I say, shut up. That's dumb.
And the Donald is 3 years younger. Also, let's appreciate that Joseph Robinette got that in. This guy is 3 years younger than I am, so if y'all worried about me sitting down, then he need to sit his ass down too.
Right, we all, and that really is the answer. The answer is they're both too old to do it. I mean, there's plenty of reasons for Trump not to be president besides his age.
I don't. Well, can we be more precise and say that they themselves at their age don't have the capacity to do that job? Because yes. I know elders, Black folks who are 90, 95. Let's pray for the 2 surviving members in Tulsa, right? There are folks who are 100 who are still functioning. Mm-hmm. I don't want this to be about age in that regard. Let's make it about these 2 and their lack of capacity.
These 2. So we'll talk about these 2. And it.
I wish I could agree with that. I feel you, and I agree that there are 80, 85, 80-year-olds who could do this job well, but this is a job that ages you, you know, and so even if you are, I mean, look at Obama. He was he's still handsome. He was handsome and dark-haired when he started the job. No. I'm just saying, he's one of the youngest, most vibrant, most intelligent presidents we've ever had. But over them 8 years, you saw the age. You saw him age.
The job aged me. I understand.
Right. And I'm just saying, even if you're capable at 80, even if you're sharp at 80, if the job ages you 10, 20 years and every 2 years, like it looked like it did the Bush and Obama, and I'm just saying, if you're 80 and you sharp, what you gonna be at 82 in that job?
All of that is true, and I wish that we would give a modicum of the same energy to what often gets overlooked, which is that this man has spent the majority of his life, probably more than the 3 of us and how long we've been here combined, in service to our country. And if we just step back from some of the theater of it all and ask ourselves who is most capable to execute the responsibilities of the person in the Oval Office, I will take the nigga that has spent his life auditioning for us to be in service to us over the 37-time convicted felon.
Yeah,
for sure. Mm-hmm. For sure, 100%.
The expertise is there. The expertise is there.
I hate that those are the choices. There was a moment where Biden was talking, and at the end, Trump said, "I don't know what he was saying at the end of that sentence, and frankly, I don't think he does either."
Yes,
and he was right.
That was in round 1, as you said.
That was in round 1. And I was like, yo, I don't like the fact that I don't know if he just lost his train of thought or if right now he thinks he's back at the White House. You know, like I don't want that concern because, again, whether I'm right or wrong, whether any of us are right or wrong in our analysis of Biden's mental acuity, his performance tonight gave license to people who do care about that and who aren't as nuanced and sophisticated to be like, I don't know about all that. I just know he ain't sound sharp. But I want to bring up another thing before we move on. Trump said that America has lost respect, that America isn't respected in the global community anymore because of Biden. I just want to bring up a quick factoid because I know they didn't do any any Trump checking up in there the other day, but I just want to show you really quickly the global. This is in countries polled levels of confidence in Biden versus Trump. And as you see, Sweden, 63% have more confidence in Biden than Trump. Germany, 63. Poland, 70. I'm not going to read every country, but you see, it ain't a country on this list. It ain't a country on this list that has more confidence in Trump than Biden. Kenya is the closest. And they of the ones I've shown you so far, and that's a plus 16, or with a 59, though, is my point, right? So they're the closest in the system. They have the most confidence in Trump of any of them, not the best margin, but the most confidence in Trump. You know, Philippines up there, 68 to 77. But in general, even with those, Ghana's another sort of outlier. Nigeria, another one. Even Israel, and I mean, Jesus, I don't know what Trump can do for Israel. They still got more confidence in Biden.
I agree.
So I'm saying that to say that once again, y'all's president was lying. Y'all former president was lying. Mm-hmm. That is not what the data was. And what'd you say?
Not mine.
Right. Fair enough. Ain't mine neither. But I want to do some fact checking, even if he didn't. There was an interesting moment here around abortion.
Yeah.
Trump dragged out a very popular right-wing argument that late-term abortions which isn't really a thing. There's late-term pregnancy. Late-term abortion isn't really a thing. That's not like a medical term. But what he calls late-term abortions are going to be happening under Democrats, and that the ending of Roe v. Wade was an ending to the possibility these Democratic states would just be, killing babies in the 9th month, which is, of course, not true. It never has been true. Biden didn't push back effectively enough to me, but either way, how important was that exchange? How important is that topic? Rebecca, I'll start with you, to this election cycle. How important is Roe v. Wade? How important is abortion?
Roe versus Wade is very important, especially for, women. I mean, it's funny because when I heard the response from, when Donald Trump, of course, said the lies about, oh, y'all killing babies up at 9 months and things of that sort. And of course, there's an exception and you do what you will with your life or whatever he said, live your life. I don't remember what it was. It was terrible. It was insensitive. And then I was, looking for Joe Biden's response, even though he did respond with some accuracies and the importance of Roe versus Wade and bringing it back, and Donald Trump appointing these people to knock it down. Like he did all of that. However, I was expecting it to be, he started with the points about why it's important. And then he started going into, I guess the immigration killing or something that has nothing to do with it. I wanted him to focus on, Roe versus Wade, why it's important, to continue to denounce what Donald Trump was saying, because we know what that did to us when it was struck down. We know who it affected. We know how big that was. We know what it took for that to be put in place. And so when I heard Biden just kind of veer off into an immigrant murdering somebody, that whole conversation, I was like, well, how do we get here? Let's stay focused. And I think that's where one of the places that he dropped the ball. It should have been really continuing on the focus of bringing back Roe versus Wade. But I did like that he shut him down on the 9 months whole thing about abortion. And he talked about the importance of that, people who, medically having to do that, that type of way. But I think he just kind of didn't focus on it long enough. And then I don't know why he veered off into the immigrant murder conversation, but yeah.
Yeah, that was a bizarre exchange that we'll talk about in a second. Yeah, this idea that Republicans have advanced again. First of all, the idea of a full-term abortion or a baby being terminated, these are babies that have died and they're effectively being birthed.
DNCs, yeah.
Right, as a way of it's for medical purposes to actually get the baby out of the body, but they're not being aborted. Biden talked about, obviously late-term abortions as only to save the life of the mother, which is another piece of it. But the entire framing of saying that Democrats are here trying to kill babies in the 9th month simply isn't true. There are some Democratic states that don't have limitations on abortion based on chronological age of the fetus. That is true. But in those, meaning that in theory, what Trump is saying could be true, right? That if they don't have any limitations on the age of the fetus for abortion, then yeah, you could think 9 months. But those very same states have limitations on when you can have an abortion. So so they say you can't have an abortion. I think 24 weeks is the latest in any of those Democratic states, and most are earlier than that. So there's no state, Democrat or Republican, in America where people are advocating or getting 9-month abortions. It's simply not true. And that's a fact check, right? It's just because this is a debate doesn't mean you can just say anything. And we've just gotten to a point where we're almost like we don't care about that. David, there's a moment, as Rebecca alluded to, where they started talking about immigrants and killing people, and it got real weird. And Biden responded to a statement by saying, let's see if I can pull up the quote. He said, there's a lot of young people being raped by their in-laws, by their spouses. Trump had talked about illegal immigrants killing and raping people.
Yeah. And
Biden said, to give you the fuller quote, a young woman who just was murdered, and he went to the funeral, and the idea that she was murdered by an immigrant coming into, they talk about that. But here's the deal. There's a lot of young women to be raped by their in-laws, by their spouses, brothers and sisters. By the way, y'all, if I sounded incoherent, that's an exact quote. So I was like, what's he talking about? This doesn't sound like a really sharp response, but also to the extent I understand what he's saying, it's almost like he's saying, well, yeah, immigrants are the only people raping people. Lots of people get raped by their in-laws and their spouses and their brothers. And I was like, what are you talking about? Why are you saying this? And sure enough, within 2 seconds, every conservative blogger, every jokester, every person you would imagine would have something to say about this, had something to say about it, because it made Biden once again seem unhinged. It made him seem like somebody who didn't have a grip on reality. There's a just let me show you real quick, just to give you one example. And this is Russell Crowe, who don't need to be saying nothing about nothing. Russell Brand, excuse me, not Russell Crowe, but Russell Brand don't need to be saying nothing about nothing. But he said this. He said, we're 17 minutes in. Let me pull this up a little better for y'all. Sorry. We're 17 minutes in, and Joe Biden is discussing the problem of people being raped by their brothers and sisters, which is quite an extraordinary yet niche topic to discuss.
Yeah, he don't even need to be talking on that, because he like
at all.
No, he likes little girls. I don't know.
At all. He don't need to be saying nothing about nothing.
Nothing.
But he reflects a whole cadre of people who were like, what the F is he talking about? Who couldn't wrap their mind. And the joke, I mean, he's going to be all over. And I'm not worried about conservative jokes. They're going to make jokes. But David, there's a whole group of people who are trying to decide tonight what to do, who to vote for. I'm not sure, even on the question of abortion, that Biden made a strong enough case, and instead may have even made some distractions.
Yeah, all of what you said is true. And 3 things come to mind for me. One, this idea that I don't know, I just want to push again or trouble this idea that we expect people to be telling the truth or grown-ass adults. There's nothing that legally requires elected officials to tell the truth when they are speaking, including when they are performing in public spaces, whether that's the wells of the halls of the legislatures that they are elected to, or stages like presidential debates. And this is one of the ways in which the performance of politics disadvantages someone who is doing the tough work of thinking about really complex policy solutions, and advantages someone who is an entertainer, who thinks about communications in superficial, and I don't say that without acknowledgement for its impact, but in superficial ways. My hope is that those who have still not decided listen to everything that they had to say, because there were moments where none of the shit that was coming out of their mouth made sense. Again, I'm frustrated that we are required to do so much work for them, in particular for someone who is not akin to our friend of white supremacists. That whole January 6th answer, acknowledging, and I hope people have seen the documentary The 6th. It tells a story of people who experienced the insurrection. But I struggled through that moment thinking about a colleague who worked for Jim Clyburn at the time, Erica Lowe. She's featured in the film, who now works for Steve Benjamin in the White House, right? Like, for him to be able to sidestep that conversation without any accountability for his actions, including stopping the progression of the police, is something that incenses me. And they design these systems such that they can do exactly that. And so again, my hope is that people listen to everything, and then again, step back and make the most, what I think is clear and informed decision about who should be responsible for all of us.
I'm glad you said that. And I want to be very clear. They both were terrible. And I have critiques of Biden because I had a higher expectation. But these are not equivalent candidates, in my opinion. You know, these aren't opposite sides of the same coin, to the extent that Biden or Trump is a much worse and more disastrous choice, in my opinion. And no matter how much I think Trump won this debate, I'm I'm talking about at the level of performance, not at the level of substance, not at the level of content, not at the level of moral authority or intellectual prowess. You know, Trump won the debate because he won the performance, but it doesn't mean you should vote for him. Let me be very clear about that. I think that's an important point for me to make, just at the ethical level. Biden warmed up, did he not? I mean, was there not a moment where you said, okay, all right, he woke up, he's okay now, maybe we on to something? You know, were there moments where you felt like Biden was hitting his stride and making points, and if so, what were those points?
There were moments where I feel like he did come back and attack, and I think it was more towards when he was running down his points about Black employment under Biden versus under Donald Trump. Just, you know, what he's done for Black people. I think he mentioned working with small Black businesses, wage increase for Black people. He mentioned a couple of different things for Black people that he's done. And I think that's where he was coming in. He had his 1, he had his 2, he had his 3. You know, that's how he started. He had his points, and he was very strong on them. He remembered them. He was very strong on them. And then, you know,
we got to point out that he remembered all 3 of his points.
He did. He was like 1, and then he said 2, and then he went to 3. And I was like, okay. I said, okay, honey, okay, he know that one. And then even there, when Donald Trump tried to, you know, tell him about his racist past, and I'm like, not the exonerated, not you saying nothing about, like, you can't. But and I wanted like Joe Biden to be like, excuse me, you know, let's not forget, but let's continue to talk about what I'm doing right now for Black people, not Black jobs and Hispanic jobs. You know, but that's where I seen Joe Biden come in a little strong. It was another part that he was strong in, but even in the terrorist conversation, I wanted him to bring up a fact check there. He kept saying to Joe Biden, under my, administration, there was no, when I was president, there was no terrorist attacks and but that's not true. And this is not the first time that he said this towards Biden. So I'm like, Biden, this is an opportunity for you to say, but actually during your time, there was a terrorist attack. We can, but he didn't do that. He ended up just going back and forth with him about his character. And I'm just like, yo, this would have been a perfect time for you to come in and fact check right here in real time and allow the American people to see, the liar that this man is, especially on the topic of terrorism. I mean, this is a man that led, like, when the conversation of January 6th, I feel like it could have been a little stronger there too. Donald Trump, you led a domestic terrorist attack right here at the Capitol, January 6th. Those are the things that I wanted him to be stronger in. But that one conversation about what he's doing for Black Americans, he remembered, and he was real strong there. That's why I seen a little bit of strength in Joe Biden.
He knows what it is, but he better remember Black people talking points. That if nothing else, David, what did you want to hear more of from either of them?
What did I want to hear more of from the? Let me try and be thoughtful. I wish that Joseph Robinette Biden had talked more about what he's done in ways that people could feel, right? Give us something that we could feel. So it's interesting that Rebecca started. It's interesting Rebecca started with the Black part of the debate, because that frustrated me the most. Those are the facts that he usually reads off at the Black History Month event at the White House for folks who work in policy spaces. And it's like, but if I don't have a job, then I don't give a fuck about the fact that you created jobs for somebody else. I got one of those Black jobs. What about my Black benefits? That was a moment for him to talk about the fact that they've made higher education more affordable. They canceled student debt for more than 4.75 million Americans through various actions, launched the most affordable repayment plan over, the SAVE plan, helped more than 940,000 people access public service loan forgiveness, something that I worked on when I was on the Hill, invested $16 billion in HBCUs. Those are numbers. Those are things that people like us resonate with when you say HBCUs. People know. He could have talked about that in a bit more. I want to go back to a point we talked about earlier, which is abortion. There was a lot there. The pivot definitely did make sense. And what did happen is that Biden talked about and criticized Trump for the reversal of Roe. He acknowledged that he was attached to it. He got Trump to reverse his position and say, I will support states regardless of where they are. And then again, name that I'm worried about those that are Democratic. This whole idea about post-birth abortions was problematic for me as somebody that understands that words have meanings. And I thought that Joseph Robinette Biden was successful at pointing out that contradiction. And then he flat out said that his administration is not for late-term abortion. In that regard, he said, period, right? So I appreciated that and wish he had been more forceful in that regard around a range of issues. I mentioned this earlier, but for folks who are just joining us, NBJC collected data. You can find it at nbjc.org/blackfacts. And what we found is that two things. One, there's no daylight between the values and policy priorities for Black LGBTQIA, LGBTQI folks, happy Pride Month, and then non-LGBTQIA plus folks. We value fairness and equality, the opportunity to build generational wealth or access what we refer to as the American dream. And when it comes to policy priorities, number one is healthcare. There was not enough talk about healthcare and the fact that the cost is too damn high. Number two is the cost of things. So this goes back to, Mark, your points around inflation. That term gets lost on most folks. What we know is that the rent is too damn high, insulin is too damn high, the cost of food is too damn high, all of it is too damn high. There was not enough acknowledgement about how Biden is still addressing problems that were created in the administration that preceded him. The third thing that everybody glossed over that Black people care most about based on our data across the country, shit connected to racial justice. This is why I think the tone-deaf response around having more police on the street was in this moment. There was an opportunity for him to talk about what this administration has tried to do to respond to the summer of racial reckoning and the ways in which white supremacists, emboldened by the Donald, have been an obstruction in that regard.
So can I add something? So when they were talking about inflation, because everything was just all over the place. When they were talking about inflation, immediately when Joe Biden was beginning to make his point, I think Donald Trump was saying that because inflation is what is actually killing Black Americans. And I think that would have been a great opportunity for Joe Biden to talk about the policing and how that is what's been killing Black Americans, especially under his administration, how Black Americans were affected, how Donald Trump, like the true issues and like that would have been perfect. But the blame on inflation and how those opportunities again were.
Or he could have talked about how many people died since his administration as a result of COVID because this nigga said go drink bleach. And then he talked about, again, let's talk about fact checking. This nigga lied out of his mouth and said the VA rated me the most whatever president. The VA don't even rate presidents. I had to Google that to make sure. But
he kept saying it over and over. They love me. They love me.
You were lying. Let's ask the service people who were forced to deal with you when you were lying about having COVID at Walter Reed if they love you, you fucking bastard. So this is where I appreciate that you said again more. I wish that our president now had done more of you have the morals of an alley cat. You molested a woman in public, a porn star, while your wife was pregnant. This guy is 3 years younger and a lot less competent. A little bit more of that kind of swag is what my barber, shout out to you, Shelton, and the brothers at the shop have been. That's what they want. That's what they need in order to make that vote. And we got a little bit of it, but I wish that we had had some more.
I wanted that early. I wanted him to swing for the fences early. Talking about the convictions, talking about, I didn't expect him to go the porn star route. But if you're gonna do it, if you're gonna use that card,
if you're gonna do it like a housewife.
Right. Exactly.
Stand on business when you're doing that. Cause I'm like, okay, you rolling, you giving it. Well, okay. But no, that's where we're gonna stop with it. Cause I was like, okay, he was saving that. That was in his back pocket.
That was definitely in his back pocket. And I needed him to get to that sooner. I wasn't sure as they were talking rather, whether or not they were going to get to the Middle East in a substantive way.
Oh yeah. They did it.
They didn't. I'm like, there's a war on Gaza that is like on day 260, I think 5 now. And we're a few months short of a full year in Gaza. The American economy has suffered. There's a whole spending debate that's up, but the spending debate is really about sort of how many billions to give, not if we should give billions. I'm saying that to say, given how much Israel has been part of our discussion, how many jobs have been taken, how many university presidents have been grilled in Congress, given all the discussion, you would think that they would have spent more time having a substantive conversation about Israel Palestine. I think the challenge, and David, you'll understand this, you'll appreciate this, particularly as somebody who is an expert in education. The problem is the reason you never see intense debates on presidential stages over education or Israel is because they don't disagree.
Right.
Substantively, they both have the same vision, the same outcome, the same methods, the same mechanism, the same ideology that undergirds it. But for example, they're both Zionists, right? At the core, they both support Zionism. They both support Israel's lack of accountability, and they both have, used the power of their office to undermine any kind of Palestinian liberation. And so I guess I shouldn't have been shocked that they would only be talking about Palestine and Israel for like 7 seconds. But I thought it was interesting that Trump stepped in and basically said he called Biden a Palestinian.
Yeah.
He said, "You're a Palestinian. They don't love you because you're a Palestinian."
Right.
But the Palestinians don't love me either because he's a bad Palestinian. I was like,
right.
He managed to use Palestinian as a slur.
Yes.
Which is a new. I mean, it was remarkable to watch how quickly they got there. If he had said that about a black person, if he said that about a Jewish person, if he said that about some other folk, Biden would have feigned outrage and indignation, and he would have taken the moral high ground. He would have talked about marching with King or some shit. But he just ignored it. And they managed to say absolutely nothing about this.
Because they stand on the same side of it when it comes to that, as far as allies to Israel, and making sure that they talk about the hostages. And when they were talking about the number of deaths, right? It was just like 1,000. No, it's way more than that. And we need to, that's why I was like, this is a specific time to really hone in on this. And I know he talked about the plan, calling for a ceasefire and what that will lead to, ultimately ending the war. But we need to talk about the bodies and the famine and what's been taken away, and literally genocide that's happening there. But of course, we cannot expect that. And this is the truth. This is what we got to call a thing a thing. We cannot expect that from Joe Biden, because Joe Biden, where he stood on this from day one, the allyship with Israel, the conversations about what led to talking about the October incident and that being the main incident, and keeping it there, the amount of people who died at the concert, that particular thing, the hostages, that conversation, instead of the bodies that have been slain, the children, the parents, the place is basically obliterated, constant fear every single day. And then we had to come to a point of not even, we said in the war, but we had to come to at least the grounds of ceasefire. And that took forever because they came up with the humanitarian pause, giving folks 4 hours to go and try to find a safe space to stay. And then we were like, nah, we're talking about ceasefire. Stop it. And now they utilize that word, which took a long time. But Joe Biden, we have to know that not to expect that. And I wanted him to say something, but where it's been this long, I know he's gonna stand 10 toes down and just hey, this is what I have planned, but I'm still on the side of Israel. Our president definitely supplied Israel with weapons, with what they needed to continue
and
to
so did Trump, and so did CNN,
and
right?
and so did
And so does CNN, right? I mean, CNN takes I don't mean to be clear, I'm not saying CNN literally supplies weapons to Israel, because I don't need y'all, I don't need that to be the headline. But what I mean is that CNN clearly has taken a position in favor of Israel in terms of its coverage. So Jake Tapper is an unabashed Zionist. Dana Bash, unabashed Zionist. So if you got Dana Bash and Jake Tapper moderating a debate between two Zionists about what's going to happen to Israel and Palestine, you're only going to get so far. And that's one of the things that I always remind people of when we talk about media, it's not just the stories you tell, it's also stories you don't tell. It's also it's the conversations you have and the conversations you don't have. It's the framing of stories. All of these things are part of how we shape public sentiment and public opinion. And this debate, despite the fact that we're ensconced in a deep war that, to your point, Rebecca, has killed. I mean, Dana Bash said it was, thousands have been killed, which is technically accurate. But if I heard thousands were killed, I wouldn't know that the number was closer to 40,000. And if you count the rubble, 48,000. You might think it's 1,000, 2,000, 3,000. It's 40. It could be as many as 48,000 killed, and almost 100,000 people have been injured in Israel's war on Gaza.
And significantly more displaced and without the opportunity to return to their home. Yes.
And none of that became part of the discussion. And for me, David, that was frustrating. David, what about some issues that, again, don't seem to make it into these debates?
Wait, Brother Marc, before we move on, just a couple of points. One, I think ethically important for me to say this, which is that there's not a single U.S. president who doesn't have blood on their hands. For the reason that you articulated, and again, acknowledging some of the comments that are even continuing in our live chat now, that's important for me to say. There is not a president that we've had that has not been a part of some form of active theater. And we just need to be clear about that. That's one. Two, they both skip right over genocide. That we just need to state and acknowledge. Very much related to that, you asked at the top of this, Marc, who won tonight? AIPAC won. And in this moment, I want to say that Congressman Jabal Bowman of New York deserved better. And I'm sorry, brother. I'm just going to say that. This for me is the Democratic dilemma. Again, I keep referencing this data that we have, nbjc.org/blackfacts. Right now, let the white media tell it. They are talking about this manufactured gender war, right? They want to talk about that, Black women are being set up to be celebrated for whatever victories there are. Black men are going to be blamed for whatever failures there are in terms of the Democratic Party and or democracy. That's not where the divide is. The gender distinction between folks talking about the Democratic Party and the president is a 4-point difference between men and women. The biggest divide is a generational one. What we know is that LGBTQIA plus youth, the number 2 most important issue for them is Israel-Palestine. It is this question of genocide. And when we zoom out and ask folks, where are you with regard to your likelihood of voting for the Democrat in charge? The biggest distinction, there's an almost 40-point difference between boomers over 55 and Gen Z, millennials, and younger voters. The Democratic Party is responsible for figuring out a meaningful answer to this problem, or it will be the reason for their demise.
You mentioned LGBTQIA, and that's actually where I was going to go. It felt like there was no significant conversation about LGBTQIA issues. And obviously issues of genocide, issues of poverty, issues of abortion, all these things affect and cut across multiple communities. But in terms of a targeted analysis or a targeted focus, in the same way that we had for Black folk, I don't know. There was just nothing. Should I be surprised?
No. Well, I'm trying to be polite, but I'm like, there were 2 mediocre white people in the anchor chair, so no, right? Like they didn't have room for like the queer question. It was too much on their bingo card. Acknowledging that, anyone who was thoughtful, to go back to again what I would have liked to see more, there was a missed opportunity when they were talking about foreign policy and there was conversation about the PACT Act. Just this fucking week, this president issued reparations for LGBTQ service members who were fired from service because they were out and
gay sex, right?
Sex, right? And so that would have been a moment to have been like, not only did you deny trans service members the opportunity to serve, not only did you do X, Y, and Z, I'm still cleaning up, and here's an example of it. So this is why things like Patricia Hill Collins and all of her work around intersectionality is important. This is why Working Woke, in spite of the failed history teacher turned governor Ronald Deion DeSantis's attempts, is important. This is why we need to teach more about media literacy so that we can make these connections without people having to be offered up a box that says, ask the gay question now.
Wow. So as a Green Party member, I have an excitement when I watch a debate like this, because I start to think, wow, maybe finally people can say enough, as you alluded to earlier, David, that people can say maybe a third party candidate makes sense, because these two sound the same and they don't sound good. Is there any chance that this debate moves us into a direction of either a significant third party surge? I'm talking about Robert Kennedy. He wouldn't be my choice for all the reasons. I think he's terrible, but Robert Kennedy or Jill Stein or Cornel West or Claudia de la Cruz. Like, is there a chance that we could see a surge in them? Or B, or two, I can't remember which one I said, does the Democratic Party say we can't win with Biden? It's time to have an open convention. It's time to get somebody else in here. It's time for Biden to fake an injury, do the basketball coach when they get fired. I want to spend more time with my family thing, and get somebody else in there, because this looks like a moment where somebody outside of these two candidates is going to benefit, and their campaign is going to benefit, whether it's a Gavin Newsom or whether it's a Jill Stein. Somebody, from my perspective, could easily gain something from this politically. What do y'all think? Rebecca, I'll start with you.
I'll say, they'll gain something about people, because this is going to force people to go and search for who else is out there, right? I think they're going to go ahead. This will definitely amplify that for a Gavin Newsom or a Cornel West. This will have people go and try to figure out who's running, who was running, what does this look like for me, who else is out there. But what we have before us is basically where we are at with it. I wish it could work where it would boost somebody else up or another candidate that may be good, but I don't see that actually happening. But it may benefit some for one of these candidates, for people to get to know them better, to see what their policies are, boost up their political celebrity, them as a public figure, and figure out who they are and all those things, do their research on that. But right now we have Donald Trump and we have Joe Biden. We're cutting close to that end time. So I don't know how much it can benefit them, except for people getting to know who these people are locally. Maybe some of the people that are in the states for these other people can possibly follow them, their administrations, and look at things more at a local level, which is great. But I think for right now, a national level, this is what we got, and this is what we got.
So you don't see, and then I'm gonna move to you, David. But first, Rebecca, you don't see any chance of the Democratic Party at least saying, take third party off the table for a minute. You don't see them saying, you know what, Biden looked really bad. I think we might need to bring in, it might be time for Kamala to step up, or it might be time for Gavin Newsom to step up. You don't see that happening?
No, I actually don't, to be honest, with all the work that they've been putting in with trying to push, a second term for Joe Biden. And they believe, I wouldn't say they actually believe. I know that, honestly, on a human level, I know that the conversations that we're having right now, they've had. But I don't think that would be a conversation. They're going to continue to push Joe Biden, and that's just what it is.
Mm-hmm. David, what do you say?
I need a name that in this moment I'm like processing emotions around the trauma of having lived through a Donald Trump administration, being proximate even in this moment to the site of an almost completely successful insurrection. And the reality that if afforded the opportunity to do all of the things that he said he will do, we might not have opportunities to talk about democratic processes and things like debates or transitions of power in perpetuity. And I know that often like that comes up and it feels like hyperbole. And my body is processing that as a reality. Semicolon. The rational part of my brain to engage in this exercise wants to, I'm thinking about Freeman Hrabowski, my mentor, president of UMBC. We shouldn't be beholden by the tyranny of either or, but be liberated by the beauty of both and. I think everything that Rebecca said is true. And I hope that for those of us who are Black people who want all of us to get free, people who understand democracy has to be defended with each generation, or just want to continue to enjoy the privileges that many people take for granted, understand that we are required to vote and. You can fill in the list of what and looks like, engage in third-party politics, finding ways to adjust the system, and we still got to vote. And in this moment, I think, while a lot of things don't excite me connected to where we are, I do get excited thinking about the Democratic Party stepping back and offering a vision for our future that is radically different than the space that we've been in or what was described tonight. I think that too often we worry about how many people we might lose if we do something radical or bold without running the numbers and appreciating that based on sheer mathematical permutations, in most places, we should be winning races and could pick up a whole lot of support. Is that likely to happen when there are a whole lot of old white men who think that what they know and what they feel matters most? I don't know. And Barack Hussein Obama was elected president.
That says a lot. That says a lot, y'all. Well, look, we're gonna wind down here. You know, we had an amazing conversation, but I want to give y'all just a chance to have a final thought. Or let me give you a final question. Feel free to take a final thought as you answer this question. Will there be another one of these? You know, if for anybody else, I'd be like, of course, they do multiple debates, usually after the convention, not before. But I'm genuinely curious to know, is this the only debate we're going to see before we vote for president?
Donald Trump said right before they ended, he was like, you know, you'll see me at another one if you want to see one of these. Or he mentioned he's going to do a show or something like, a press conference, whatever he was saying. But he said, or another one of these. So we may see another one of these before, of course, the election, just to see. We're going to have to see them in that light. Usually, that's what we're going to want to see. They're going to have to bring out Joe Biden again to give him, I think, another opportunity to shine. And so we may definitely see something else with them two together. Well, naturally, I feel like we've
stuff him with something, man. They better inject him with. He better be high as giraffe booty, man. They better
get some good rest, or you know, I know, like you were saying, like he works a lot. It's a lot that he going through on top of being, you know, elderly. It's a lot that he has to take on. He running the damn nation.
He don't need to rest too much. Like, if he rests any longer, he gonna be home with the Lord. They need to keep him up.
He might be.
You saying he on 5%? Oh my God.
We got the buffering. See, we go off the joke.
Battery is definitely red.
I'm done.
David, as the mature, intelligent one in this group, please, because I'm a child at this point. What do you?
I'm not going to touch that. What I will acknowledge and name is that there's already a second debate scheduled on ABC. They haven't named who was supposed to be in the chair. We'll see if they continue to honor that. But there was something in the chat that stuck with me. And I imagine that there are other people who feel this way. This goes back to when I rung the gay bell. For folks who feel like, let me not even do it that way. Our data shows that 90% of Black folks, let me back up. There's often this lie that we ingest that Black folks are uniquely or more homophobic or transphobic or biphobic than other people. That's not true. The vast majority of Black folks that we survey and that I know are supportive of Black people with multiple marginalized identities. Nearly 90% of Black folks we survey acknowledge discrimination, that people who are members of sexual minority communities, to no fault of their own, I am perfectly made in all of my queerness, both my Blackness and my same gender lovingness. However, comma, people believe in this zero-sum myth that if the LGBTQ community wins or gets a political victory, it has to come at the cost of the civil rights community or the Black community. There have always been people like me who are members of multiple marginalized communities and who are Black, who are affected by linked fate, who are working to get free with you. And I don't get to choose to step out of my Blackness to be protected or accepted by another community. And so I'm spending this time to say my prayers that you and I can learn to argue better together, to become more compassionate and competent, because if nothing else, we should appreciate what Fannie Lou Hamer taught us, which is that none of us are free unless and until all of us are free. Mm-hmm. And while we acknowledge that Russia and China and white wing evangelicals are spending money around misinformation and disinformation so that we don't go vote, so we buy the lie that we don't understand our vote power, which is not true. They also know that divide and conquer is a tactic that has always worked for white supremacists and those who are willing to be grifters. Shout out to Candace Owens. And so my prayer, beloved, is that we stop taking the bait and that we stop fighting each other when we need to be working together. And if we supported shit like the Equality Act, it would not only benefit LGBTQIA plus folks, it would benefit women and girls and other members of marginalized communities. And so I want to take this offline for whoever's interested. I'll be in these streets. You can holler at me. I mean all of this sincerely, but y'all got to deal with this homophobia. Queerness is African. Before the words lesbian, gay existed, Sambufu Some writes about this. In my village in West Africa, the words lesbian, gay didn't exist, but the word gatekeeper did. We fucking have to do better.
Gotta do
better. Clearly it touched me. I don't know about I gotta go back and find who said it, but it clearly stuck with me.
I'm about to go back through these comments. It's
well, somebody was like, I'm tired of the gay thing. Why it always got to be about the gay thing, especially when it's about Black folks? And I literally this 2 days ago, I'm at the White House for the first ever Native and Indigenous Two-Spirit ceremony, and I'm sitting with Native people who are saying, imagine having a language that doesn't have gender pronouns, where we don't get into this shit about male, female, and the distinctions where people become subhuman because of a term and boxes that they're supposed to be fit in. Like, we got to stop doing the work of white supremacists, beloveds.
That is for sure. Family, this has been a great conversation, man. I love you. I wish y'all two was up there running for office or something.
Okay, because I feel like we would have a good little administration, because I love you.
Good.
y'all got it down, yo. Anyway, I appreciate y'all. Thank y'all for hanging out with me, for laughing with me, for being ridiculous with me. Everybody, make sure while you in them comments as we wind down, make sure you put in your final grades. You know, since we're in night school, give your final grade in the comments to Biden and Trump. What grades do they each get? Let me know how you think this thing turned out.
And I aced it. I took an IQ test and I aced it.
Hey.
Man, it's so much fun with y'all, man. I appreciate y'all. Everybody, thank you for watching this. This is what we do here at Night School, man. Our job is not to do what cable news does. It's not to do a podcast it's to give a deep, thorough analysis. No drive-by comments, no talking points, no sound bites. We want to go with depth and nuance to break down what's going on in the world. And I hope we did that tonight. I did my best, but I know for a fact 100% that Rebecca and David tore this thing down, and they gave the type of analysis, the type of witty, brilliant, insightful, counterintuitive thinking that we're supposed to have in spaces like this. Where the debate fell short, where the candidates didn't meet the mark, my two panelists did. So I shout out to them one more time. I really love and appreciate both of them. On top of that, I want to thank y'all for being here with me, man. We've been rocking out for almost 3 hours now, and it's been nothing but just fun and brilliance, and I'm inspired, honestly, by what's here. Not by the candidates, not by the topics they covered, not by the journalists who covered it, to be sure, but by y'all. And I'm just grateful for it. Anyway, We'll be back tomorrow with more Night School, man. We always going to be here Monday to Friday, 9 p.m. Eastern time. In the meantime, spread the word of what we did tonight. That means hit the like button right now. Before you leave tonight, hit that like button. It's the people out there right now. Hit the like button. Hitting the like button lets our reach spread. Believe it or not, it really does matter. Also, hit the subscribe button. If y'all out here right now hanging with us for Night School and y'all ain't hit the subscribe button, you got to do it because it increases our footprint in the digital space. It lets people know how much reach we have. And also, I want you to consider supporting the work that we do. And I want to be clear about the work that we do. Every single day, we're putting out grassroots media, independent media, radical media, black media, all these boxes you can check off. And we're doing it without a billionaire writing a check. There's no, or fake billionaires, there's no Byron Allen here. We're here with our money, the people's money and my money, supporting this thing. We are doing this with the power of the people. So please, if you want to support this kind of media, if you want to support this type of analysis, this type of conversation, hit the join button. If you're on your desktop, hit the join button. If you're on your phone, go to your desktop and hit the join button and consider becoming a monthly member of the channel. By doing that for as low as $3.99 a month, we're able to support and have a financial base from which to operate. That's what allows us to do Night School. That's what allows us to do the War on Gaza report. That's what allows us to do Classroom in the Cell with Mumia Abu-Jamal. That's what allows us to do Coffee and Books. That's what allows us to do office hours. We can do all of this work because of your support. And I'm grateful for your support. So please, 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 please know how from the bottom of my heart, I'm grateful for all that you do to make this happen. And I know some people can't do a monthly subscription or monthly commitment to anything. That's cool. I want you to consider right now making a one-time contribution this month, what I call tuition to Night School. That's right. Go to Cash App, PayPal, Venmo, or Zelle and make a contribution, not forever, not every month, not every year, not every day, but just think about making one right now for this month, for this time. If everybody watching right now were to contribute just $10, we would meet all of our financial goals for the month. We've been running a little bit shorter in June than normal, and I get it. A lot is going on. People on vacation, people traveling, but we can support and shore up our financial needs. That means I'm talking about paying for staff. I'm talking about paying for producers. I'm talking about paying to edit. I'm talking about putting money into and investing toward building a full studio. We can do all of that with your support. Consider dropping $10 on the Cash App right now. If you did $10 on the Cash App right now for the month, it would allow us to go so far. And if you can't do 10, do 5. If you can do more than 10, we'd be even more grateful. We appreciate all of it. But money is not the biggest thing. Your support is the biggest thing. So keep watching, keep liking, keep talking, keep sharing, keep studying, because that's what Night School is all about. And we'll see you again tomorrow. Peace.